For thousands of years, the massive stone blocks resting silently on the Giza plateau have provoked a question that never fades. Are we truly looking at the legacy of ancient Egypt? Or are these the surviving ruins of a civilization far older, one that official history has never acknowledged? Since the first blocks were stacked into pyramids, people have argued about their real purpose. Tombs for pharaohs, astronomical observatories, hidden treasure vaults, or even vast machines designed to harness energy. Each theory is like a doorway into the shadows of human memory, where myths, carvings on stone walls, and geological traces refuse to line up neatly. Perhaps these monuments are nothing more than a staggering achievement of the Bronze Age, but perhaps they were created to safeguard something greater, a body of knowledge hidden deep beneath the sands, meant to endure the kind of catastrophe the ancients believed was inevitable. If that is true, then the history we know is only a fragile surface. This is not just the story of the pyramids, but of humanity's distorted memory. Welcome to Deformed History. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it for you right now. I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. The story begins not in the blazing sun above the desert, but deep beneath it, in a darkness that has been hidden for millennia. Modern satellites, orbiting hundreds of miles above Earth, send invisible pulses down into the bedrock, and the echoes return with images that should not exist. Underneath the Khafra Pyramid, the second largest on the Giza plateau, lies a labyrinth that stretches farther than the human eye could follow if it were carved into open air. These are not random voids, not the cracks of shifting stone, but a city structured with precision. Tunnels, vertical shafts, platforms stacked like floors of a forgotten tower turned upside down into the ground. It extends more than 6,000 feet, plunging over 2,000 feet beneath the desert floor, deeper than any known monument of the ancient world was ever built. To grasp that depth is to imagine a skyscraper like the Burj Khalifa, but inverted into the earth. And if such an impossible structure truly exists, then the story of Egypt, as we have been told, is no longer complete. The scans reveal 8 colossal shafts, like cylinders descending into the dark, each encircled by what look like spiral ramps or stairways carved for movement downward. At their base sit massive cube-shaped enclosures, perfectly aligned, measuring nearly the length of a football field on every side. They are not scattered, but symmetrically placed, linked by horizontal corridors that extend like veins in stone. Further still are multi-leveled halls and interlacing passageways, the pattern less like ruins and more like the blueprints of engineers. Beyond the pyramid's footprint, faint outlines of buildings, courts, and long walls stretch into geometric grids as if an entire subterranean city once thrived below the plateau and was buried deliberately, layer by layer, until only silence remained. This is the revelation of radar and seismic imaging, a technology called synthetic aperture radar, SOAR, that ignores the sand and penetrates the crust of the Earth itself. In earlier times, archaeologists struggled with ground-penetrating devices that faltered after a few meters. But SOAR, tuned with seismic vibrations from the planet's natural tremors, reads far deeper, capturing distinctions between solid rock, empty void, and even metal-rich surfaces. When scientists processed the returning signals into a three-dimensional map, the result was something too orderly to dismiss. They cross-checked from different satellites, searching for error, but the same structures appeared again and again. What should have been static stone rang back as the outline of corridors, pillars, and chambers. At once, new questions rise. Who carved this? Why so deep? Egyptian dynasties built tombs and temples, yes, but none sank into the earth at such terrifying depths. None required spiraling shafts that resemble stairways to an underworld. One explanation begins to circulate, that the complex was not built for ceremony or as a palace for kings, but as a vault, a place to survive catastrophe. Ancient Egyptian texts, long thought to be allegory, whisper of a great purification and of a burning sky. Priests wrote of floods that washed away worlds and firestorms that turned day into searing light. For centuries, those words were read as symbols, but now, with the image of a buried city revealed, they take on a sharper edge. What if the great purification was not metaphor, but memory? What if the burning sky was the site of a comet, or the blast of a solar storm that ignited the heavens? If so, then the labyrinth was not built for the dead, but for the living. A vault to preserve knowledge, medicine, astronomy, and perhaps a remnant of a people who believed survival was possible only far beneath the desert. The thought is staggering. For if the foundations of Khafra's pyramid are younger than the city it hides, then Egypt's kings were inheritors, not builders. They may have raised monuments above ground, aligning their pyramids to Orion's belt, but beneath them already lay a more ancient design, one that also pointed to the stars. There is evidence of cosmic alignment in the shafts themselves, their angles corresponding with the belt of Orion in a way that mirrors the layout of the pyramids above. Yet the pyramid's alignments match the sky as it appeared in 10,500 BC, while the structures underground, buried far deeper in untouched strata, hint at something even older, perhaps Paleolithic, perhaps from an age when humans are said to have lived only in caves. If the timeline is real, we are staring not just at Egyptian engineering, but at the possibility of a civilization tens of thousands of years older than the pharaohs. Skeptics argue the data could be misread, artifacts of radar echoes, but history itself is littered with rumors of tunnels beneath Giza. 5th century Greek travelers spoke of labyrinths that housed endless halls. Herodotus wrote of courtyards and chambers engraved with figures. Later, Arab chroniclers hinted at secret passages filled with knowledge from a time before the flood. In the 1930s, reports briefly surfaced of tunnels uncovered near the Sphinx, only to vanish as quickly as they appeared, suppressed or ignored. And now, as technology forces these shapes to emerge once more, the silence surrounding them grows louder. Beneath the tomb of Osiris, separate from the Great Pyramid itself, the scans even show a sealed chamber containing what appears to be a massive sarcophagus, submerged in flowing water, untouched since antiquity. Its isolation at such depth makes no sense for ceremonial burial. What power or purpose demanded its concealment? Some researchers believe this chamber could represent the earliest attempt at sealing away knowledge, a capsule in stone, a story waiting for its narrator. If true, then our view of Egypt must shift from kings and dynasties to something broader, a continuum of human memory, where each age built upon the traces of one before. The pyramids we see may be monuments of the 4th dynasty, but beneath them may lie the bones of another world. The possibility is unsettling because it raises the thought that history as we know it has been edited, shortened, and framed to fit a narrative of gradual progress, when in fact the past may have been interrupted by cataclysm, rebuilt, and interrupted again. That is why the underground city resonates with such power. It forces us to imagine that the sands of Giza are not only covering monuments but concealing survival strategies designed by hands that feared the sky itself. To build downward is to flee from something above. To align shafts to the stars is to remember a cosmic map that mattered for reasons we no longer understand, and to bury the knowledge so deep that only the earth itself could guard it is to send a message not just to the future of Egypt, but to the future of all humanity. The desert wind still sweeps across the plateau, filling the cracks with dust, erasing footprints within hours, giving the illusion of timeless silence. Yet, under that stillness, the ground may be humming with the echoes of chambers we have only begun to uncover, echoes of people who might have looked to the same stars and feared that one day fire would fall again. If the story of Giza is more than the tale of kings, then perhaps it is also the story of survival. And if survival required building a city inside the earth itself, then the legacy we face is not just a mystery of stone, but a reminder of how fragile our world has always been. The mystery of the underground city would already be enough to shake the foundations of what we believe about Egypt, but the story does not end beneath the sands. Just as radar revealed deep structures, another group of scientists turned their attention to the Great Pyramid itself, probing not with seismic pulses, but with invisible waves of energy. The experiment was simple in design, yet astonishing in its result. They directed electromagnetic waves, the same kind that make radios sing and phones connect, toward the pyramid, expecting the monument to simply absorb or scatter the energy like any other mass of stone. But the pyramid did something no ordinary structure should do. It gathered the waves, focused them, and sent them coursing into 3 chambers aligned along a vertical axis. The subterranean chamber carved into the bedrock, the queen's chamber slightly higher, and the king's chamber near the center of the pyramid's body. The energy pooled in these spaces as if the pyramid itself were a resonator, vibrating like a colossal instrument tuned to the frequencies of the earth. The phenomenon echoed a theory once ridiculed, that the Great Pyramid was never intended as a tomb at all. Christopher Dunn, an engineer who had studied the precision of its construction, had long argued it was in fact a machine, a power plant of stone. According to his view, the narrow shafts were not symbolic air passages, but waveguides, conduits designed to channel energy. He proposed that the Queen's chamber functioned as a chemical reaction chamber where 2 substances, perhaps zinc and hydrochloric acid, were introduced, generating hydrogen gas that filled the ascending passages. This gas would rise into the king's chamber, where its resonance with the granite walls could amplify vibrational energy, turning the entire pyramid into a kind of ancient generator. For decades, such an idea lived at the margins of archaeology, dismissed as pseudoscience, yet the experiments with electromagnetic waves suggested the pyramid behaved much like an antenna, one crafted thousands of years before antennas were ever conceived. If the pyramid was a machine, then what was its purpose? Was it meant to power something hidden below, connected to the underground structures that radar had uncovered? Or was it designed to draw energy from the Earth itself, a way of stabilizing or protecting in times of cosmic upheaval? The thought brings us back to the idea of survival architecture, of monuments not only built for ceremony, but for utility. Imagine a civilization aware of cycles of disaster, floods, fire from the sky, quakes that rip the land, and imagine that their response was not simply prayer or story, but engineering. They carved a city into the ground and built machines above it, machines of stone that could focus energy downward, perhaps to sustain life, perhaps to preserve knowledge, perhaps to signal to the stars. The evidence of alignment grows stronger with every observation. The shafts in the king's chamber point to stars that held sacred meaning to the Egyptians: Sirius, Orion's belt, and others associated with the god Osiris, lord of the afterlife. The ground plan of the pyramids themselves mirrors Orion, as it would have appeared more than 12,000 years ago. Yet, inside, the shafts align with stars as they were 4,500 years ago. This dual dating suggests layers of construction. One phase rooted in a prehistoric alignment, another carved later, perhaps as restoration or reinterpretation. It implies the site was sacred long before the dynasties we know, its meaning altered and redefined with each new age, but never truly forgotten. What complicates the matter further is geology itself. The Sphinx, crouching beside the pyramids, bears scars of water erosion that no desert wind could produce. In the early 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch examined the weathering patterns and concluded that the monument had been exposed to centuries of heavy rainfall that had not touched Giza since the end of the Ice Age, around 10,000 years ago. His claim ignited fierce resistance, for it meant the Sphinx, and by extension the plateau itself, was far older than the accepted dynastic timeline. The discovery was met with silence, denial, and accusations, but the evidence of water on stone refuses to fade. If the Sphinx is 10,000 years old, then the pyramids may sit atop a legacy deeper than written history, one stretching back into the time when glaciers retreated and sea levels rose, drowning coastlines and erasing stories that survived only as myths. Atlantis, the flood, Zep-Tepi, the first time described by Egyptian priests to Greek historians, all speak of a golden age destroyed by catastrophe. For centuries, scholars dismissed these tales as allegory, but the possibility of structures beneath Giza and the anomalies of the pyramid's behavior force a reconsideration. Could the ancients have built not merely to honor gods, but to safeguard against what they feared would return? Could the myths of burning skies and endless waters be memories encoded in stone? And if so, what does that make of our own fragile modernity, with cities built on coasts and technology bound to fragile grids of power? One striking detail is the consistency of numbers. The pyramid's dimensions echo the scale of Earth itself. Its height, when multiplied by a specific constant, approximates the radius of the planet with uncanny accuracy. Its perimeter multiplied similarly approximates Earth's equatorial circumference. The number 43,200, derived from cycles of celestial precession, recurs in these calculations as if the builders embedded astronomical knowledge in limestone and granite. Nikola Tesla, fascinated by such numbers, once declared that if one understood the significance of 3, 6, and 9, one held the key to the universe. Tesla himself dreamed of harnessing Earth's resonance to deliver free energy, and his Wardenclyffe Tower in New York echoed the form and function of the Great Pyramid, complete with subterranean shafts and an emphasis on vibration. Did Tesla, consciously or not, attempt to recreate what the ancients may already have known? If the Great Pyramid was a generator, its traces are subtle yet haunting. The granite walls of the king's chamber are slightly bowed, as if subjected to immense internal force. Residues of acid cling to passages that seem inexplicable for ceremonial use. The unfinished subterranean chamber resonates at frequencies that make the air itself vibrate when sound is introduced. And when an opera singer once tested her voice inside, her note echoed with a power that traveled to chambers far below, as if the monument itself was designed to channel vibration. It is a monument of stone, yet it behaves like an instrument of sound and energy. Still, mainstream Egyptology insists the pyramid was a tomb, though no body has ever been found inside and no hieroglyphic inscriptions grace its walls. This absence is louder than any text. Every pharaoh's tomb elsewhere in Egypt brims with inscriptions, art, and ritual detail. The pyramid, by contrast, is silent, a structure stripped of story, as though its builders wanted the architecture itself to be the message. Perhaps that is why theories persist, because the silence invites them, because emptiness begs for an explanation. The deeper one ventures into the possibility, the more the pyramid ceases to be a monument and becomes instead a puzzle, one piece of a network of enigmas spread across the plateau. Shafts that align to stars, chambers that focus energy, tunnels that vanish into shadow, scars that whisper of ancient reigns. Each fragment hints at a world that saw the earth differently, not as a passive ground to build upon, but as a living body that could be harnessed, aligned, and endured. The underground city may have been their refuge, the pyramid their engine, the Sphinx their guardian. And together, they suggest that Egypt wasn't the beginning of civilization, but one of its many rebirths after disaster. The sands hold their secrets tightly, but technology is loosening their grip. Radar, Muon scans, chemical analysis, all tools the ancients could never have imagined, are peeling back the desert's silence. Yet the closer we get to answers, the more resistance rises, as if the guardians of history fear that too much truth could unravel the story we have told ourselves for centuries. Still, the monuments remain, patient and unyielding, daring us to keep looking, daring us to remember what they may have been built to protect. If the pyramid was more than a tomb, if it was an instrument of energy or survival, then the question becomes, how did the people of the Nile move the impossible stones that made it real? Each block of the Great Pyramid weighs between 2 and 70 tons, millions of them stacked with precision so exact that modern engineers struggle to replicate it. The traditional explanation has long been brute manpower, ramps, and sledges dragged across sand, but even the most generous estimates require tens of thousands of workers, decades of toil, and techniques that leave little archaeological trace. For centuries, the debate circled, some suggesting spiraling ramps around the pyramid, others envisioning elaborate machines of timber and rope. Yet in 2024, a new discovery shifted the discussion in a way no one had anticipated. Using radar scans, archaeologists uncovered the bed of a vanished river, an ancient branch of the Nile now called Aramat, meaning pyramids. This waterway once flowed for nearly 40 miles along the plateau, where 31 pyramids still stand. Sediment cores pulled from the desert confirmed the presence of river mud beneath the sands, placing its active life during the very era of pyramid construction. Suddenly, the puzzle gained a missing piece. If the Nile once flowed at the foot of Giza, the massive stones could have been floated downstream from quarries in the south, ferried on barges, and brought directly to harbors connected to the pyramids by ceremonial causeways. These causeways, once thought to be purely symbolic avenues linking valley temples to pyramid bases, were revealed as functional conduits for transport, guiding stones from boat to foundation. Geography, not just manpower, was the true secret tool. The ancients had placed their greatest monuments not randomly in desert sand, but along a living artery of water. This revelation resolves part of the enigma, but not all. Even if stones reached the plateau by boat, how were they raised to the height of 48 stories without cranes, pulleys, or steel? The cuts of the blocks show a precision that defies explanation by rough tools alone. Some researchers point to copper chisels hardened with arsenic, or to dolerite pounders, volcanic stone harder than granite. Yet the sheer volume of work suggests an efficiency we cannot reproduce. Was it ingenious use of levers and counterweights? Or is there truth in the legends of lost techniques, vibrations, or resonance, methods spoken of in scattered traditions across the world? In Tibet, stories persist of monks using sound to levitate stones. In Egypt, fragments of myth describe words of power that moved the immovable. Could such tales be distorted memories of techniques long lost, echoes of a science we no longer grasp? Whether through water or vibration, the construction alone demonstrates a mastery of environment that is staggering. The pyramid is aligned within a fraction of a degree to true north, its base level to less than an inch across hundreds of feet. Each side bows inward slightly, a concavity imperceptible from the ground, but revealed at equinox, as if the builders anticipated the play of sunlight across millennia. The very mass of the structure, 6 million tons of limestone and granite, rests not on shifting sand, but on a plateau of bedrock carefully chosen for stability. It is both monument and machine, an object so well tuned to its setting that it has survived earthquakes, storms, and centuries of theft, while palaces and temples around it crumbled. Yet when invaders and rulers sought to pierce its secrets, they found silence. In the 9th century, Caliph al-Mamun, unable to find an entrance, ordered his men to hack through the north face with picks and fire, creating what is still called Mamun's Hole. They expected treasure, golden coffins, inscriptions, but inside they found only stone corridors, empty chambers, and an undecorated granite coffer too large to have been carried through the narrow passageways. The absence baffled them. What kind of tomb bore no inscriptions, no offerings, no body? What kind of king built a monument of such scale only to leave it barren? Centuries later, explorers found shafts leading upward from the chambers, narrow tunnels sealed by blocks and ending abruptly. In 1872, an amateur named Wayneman Dixon discovered 2 of these hidden shafts in the Queen's chamber by tapping the walls and breaking through with hammer and chisel. The shafts angled upward toward the sky, their paths terminating at sealed doors of stone fitted with copper handles. What purpose could such passages serve? They were too small for human passage, too precise to be accidental. Later, robotic probes sent into the shafts revealed more doors behind the first, layers of sealed spaces leading into darkness. Each door seemed to promise revelation. Yet when one was drilled open in 2002, the probe found another door beyond. The mystery compounding instead of resolving. Meanwhile, stories multiplied of tunnels beneath the plateau. In the 1930s, Hamilton Wright described a network of passages discovered near the Sphinx, descending over 100 feet with chambers branching into shadow. Photographs were said to exist, shown to select scholars, only to vanish as quickly as they appeared. Egyptian authorities redirected attention to tombs and treasures elsewhere, while whispers persisted of an underground city hidden deliberately from the public eye. Why conceal such a discovery? Some say it is because to reveal it would mean rewriting the foundations of history, admitting that civilization is older, stranger, and more advanced than we allow. Others suspect the fear of chaos, that to unveil too much would topple the accepted narrative on which national pride and scholarly careers depend. And yet fragments of the truth have always lingered. Herodotus, visiting Egypt in the 5th century BC, wrote of a labyrinth containing 12 palaces and endless halls, walls engraved with figures, roofs of carved stone. He described underground chambers connected to pyramids near Memphis, a vision so vast it seemed incredible. Later, Roman authors repeated the story of subterranean palaces, while Arab chroniclers spoke of halls filled with wisdom hidden before the flood. These are not isolated inventions, but echoes across cultures and centuries, pointing to a memory too consistent to ignore. If even part of this memory is true, then the pyramids are not isolated monuments, but the visible tips of a greater architecture that extends below ground, a system of chambers and tunnels linking monuments into a single design. Imagine the plateau as not merely a necropolis, but a machine of stone and earth, aligning sky, water, and resonance. The pyramids above channel energy, the city below shelters knowledge, and the Sphinx watches as guardian. To look at Giza this way is to see less a burial ground and more a living system, designed with intent we cannot yet comprehend. The sands shift, the winds erase, but the geometry endures. Even if buried rivers vanish and dynasties crumble, the alignment to Orion remains. The concavity of sides holds. The precision of level persists. The stones are more stubborn than time, carrying forward questions no one has yet answered. How old is the story of Giza? Who began it? And if we continue to dig deeper, both in stone and in memory, will we find not the beginning of Egypt, but the remnant of something far older, a civilization whose voice still murmurs through corridors of silence. The silence of the pyramid is not an emptiness, but a presence, a kind of deliberate void that suggests its builders wanted the structure itself to be the message. And when researchers stepped back from the pyramid to study the entire plateau, they began to see patterns that were far from accidental. The 3 great pyramids at Giza are not scattered randomly, but laid out in a formation that mirrors the stars of Orion's belt, each slightly offset, each scaled in proportion. This alignment has been pointed out many times, often dismissed as coincidence, but the precision becomes harder to ignore when taken with the larger context. The Nile, winding its way through the desert, reflects the arc of the Milky Way, so that the land itself seems to echo the sky. The builders appear to have created a map in stone, anchoring heaven to earth, as if the plateau was meant to serve as both observatory and cosmic replica. But there is a contradiction hidden within this cosmic mirror. The ground plan of the pyramids matches the sky not as it looks today, but as it appeared around 10,500 BC, more than 7,000 years before the reign of Khufu, the pharaoh conventionally credited with raising the Great Pyramid. The shafts inside the monument, however, point to star positions consistent with 2500 BC. Two different dates emerge from two different alignments, suggesting not a single act of construction, but layers of design. Perhaps the original sacred ground was established in the deep past, its foundations aligned with Orion in a prehistoric sky, and only later were the pyramids built or rebuilt upon that template. If so, Egypt's kings were not originators but inheritors, caretakers of a site whose meaning was already ancient. The notion unsettles Orthodox history, for it implies the presence of an advanced culture long before the accepted rise of civilization. Yet clues continue to mount. The Sphinx, with its lion's body and enigmatic human face, gazes directly east, aligned with the rising sun at the spring equinox. This is no accident of chance. The monument functions as a cosmic sentinel, its body placed on the 30-degree latitude, a band of Earth that has held spiritual significance in cultures as far apart as Tibet and Sumer. And here, too, geology speaks louder than myth. The deep grooves along the flanks of the Sphinx are not the work of sand and wind alone, but of water, heavy rainfall pouring for centuries, the kind that fell only at the end of the Ice Age. To accept this is to accept that the Sphinx may be 10,000 years old or more, older than the desert itself, older than dynastic Egypt, and perhaps older than any written record we possess. When such claims surfaced in the 1990s, spearheaded by geologist Robert Schoch and Egyptologist John Anthony West, they were met with furious resistance. To admit such age would disrupt not only Egyptian chronology, but the foundation of world history. The official stance was denial, but the evidence of water is etched into stone, undeniable in its curve and depth. It tells of a time when the plateau was not arid but fertile, when rains lashed the land, and when the builders of the Sphinx sought to capture eternity in limestone. That time does not fit into the neat timeline of kings and dynasties, but perhaps history is not as neat as we believe. Legends from many cultures speak of a great flood, of destruction followed by rebirth. The Sumerians called it the deluge. The Egyptians told of Zep-Tepi, the first time, when gods walked the earth before disaster reshaped the world. The Greeks told of Atlantis, an island swallowed by the sea. For centuries, these were seen as myths, but the geology of the Sphinx and the alignments of the pyramids suggest they may be distorted memories of real cataclysm. If civilizations rise and fall with the cycles of nature, then perhaps Giza is less a beginning and more a survival, a message from an age that came before. Beneath the Sphinx itself, rumors whisper of hidden chambers. In the 1930s, tunnels were reported leading deep below, only for such accounts to vanish into silence. In the 1990s, teams attempted to investigate using seismic scans, detecting anomalies beneath the pause of the monument. For a brief moment, the world seemed on the edge of revelation. Yet permissions were revoked, projects halted, and doors closed. Some say this was due to politics, others to the fear that whatever lay beneath would overturn accepted history. One American clairvoyant, Edgar Cayce, had even predicted decades earlier that a hall of records, a library of ancient wisdom, lay beneath the Sphinx and would be discovered in the late 20th century. His followers waited eagerly, and when hints of chambers emerged, they proclaimed prophecy fulfilled. But the excavations were shut down, the findings labeled inconclusive, and the mystery sealed once more. Why this silence? If there is nothing beneath the Sphinx, why not excavate and put the matter to rest? And if there is something, why conceal it? The question lingers, amplified by the accounts of ancient historians. Herodotus described a labyrinth of chambers filled with carved figures. Roman authors echoed tales of underground palaces, and Arab chroniclers told of tunnels filled with knowledge hidden before the flood. These accounts are separated by centuries, yet share a common vision: that beneath Egypt's monuments lies a world unseen, a vault of stone built to endure what the surface could not. It is possible that modern authorities fear the chaos such a revelation might cause. To admit that civilization stretches back tens of thousands of years would topple the careful scaffolding of history as it has been taught. It would demand new answers for who we are, where we came from, and what we are capable of. But perhaps the greater danger lies in what might be found: knowledge, technologies, or records that could challenge not only history, but power itself. To keep such secrets buried may seem safer than to let them loose. Yet the sands of Giza cannot silence curiosity forever. Every new technology, radar, seismic scans, muon detectors, peels back a layer of the desert's secrecy. Each discovery forces us to ask not only what happened, but why. Why build on this plateau? Why align to Orion? Why carve a lion-faced sentinel that bears scars of rain in a desert land? The answers may not come easily, but the questions themselves already change the way we see the past. For if Giza is more than tombs, if it is a map of heaven, a machine of energy, and a vault of memory, then it is not simply Egypt's heritage but humanity's. It may be the last voice of a world that was lost, a world that saw catastrophe in the sky and sought to leave behind a warning, a beacon, or a chance for survival. And as we stand on the plateau today, the sun blazing, the wind carrying dust across our faces, we may feel that voice still speaking, not in words, but in stone. The question of who built the pyramids has always tormented historians and dreamers alike, and perhaps it is here that the story becomes most tangled. For centuries, the official narrative has been that Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, the pharaohs of Egypt's fourth dynasty, ordered their construction as tombs for themselves, symbols of divine authority etched in stone. Yet when we step inside the Great Pyramid, the story falters. No hieroglyphs decorate its walls, no treasures line its chambers, no mummy lies within its sarcophagus. It is a tomb without a body, a monument without a name. Compare this to the richly inscribed tombs of the Valley of the Kings, where every surface shouts the legacy of the pharaoh entombed there, and the silence of Giza becomes deafening. In the 14th century, Arab historians wrote of how the Caliph al-Mamun broke into the pyramid seeking treasure, only to find barren corridors and an empty box of granite. Their disappointment has echoed across time. If the pyramid was truly built for Khufu, why did his name appear only on a crude inscription scrawled in red paint within a hidden relieving chamber, discovered in the 19th century under suspicious circumstances? Some argue it was a quarry mark left by builders, but others suspect it was planted by explorers desperate to prove a connection between the pyramid and the pharaoh history demanded. To this day, the debate continues, with skeptics pointing out that no contemporary inscription anywhere in Egypt explicitly states that Khufu built the Great Pyramid. Even the Sphinx, commonly attributed to Khafra, tells a story riddled with uncertainty. Its face, some argue, does not match the statues of Khafra preserved elsewhere. Its head is disproportionately small compared to its massive lion body, suggesting it was recarved in later times from an older monument. If so, the Sphinx may predate the pharaohs entirely, its original visage lost beneath centuries of sand and reshaping. Legends whisper that its true head may once have been leonine, a guardian beast watching the horizon, only later reshaped into a human face. If that is the case, then even Egypt's most iconic guardian is not the work of the dynasties we credit, but a relic of something older still. Accounts from travelers and historians only deepen the mystery. In the 5th century BC, Herodotus claimed that priests told him of underground chambers connecting the pyramids, a labyrinth that stored the knowledge of ages. Strabo, the Greek geographer, also described secret passages beneath the monuments. Later, the Roman writer Pliny mentioned a labyrinth of Egypt, filled with bewildering corridors and endless halls. Were they exaggerations? Or were they recounting memories of structures that once lay open, but have since been sealed? When modern researchers in the 19th and 20th centuries claimed to rediscover tunnels and chambers beneath the plateau, their stories were swiftly silenced, their findings buried in archives or dismissed as error. And yet the echoes remain, scattered through centuries like fragments of a forgotten chorus. The reluctance of official institutions to confront these questions has bred suspicion. In the 1990s, geophysical surveys detected anomalies beneath the Sphinx, suggesting cavities and possible chambers, but permissions to excavate were denied. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most prominent antiquities official, at first acknowledged tunnels beneath the monument, even filmed himself entering one, but later reversed his stance, declaring there was nothing to see. Why the shift? Some say it was politics, others financial interests. But for those who believe the plateau holds deeper secrets, it was proof of a cover-up. Theories flourish in such silence, from underground libraries to hidden relics of a lost civilization. Even within Egypt's own tradition, there are hints of inheritance rather than invention. Ancient inscriptions sometimes describe the pharaohs as restorers of monuments, not builders. A plaque discovered in the 19th century spoke of Khufu and Khafra repairing the Sphinx, not creating it. If true, then even the Egyptians of the Old Kingdom may have regarded the plateau as already sacred, its monuments the legacy of an earlier time. They may have built their pyramids in homage to a site whose purpose they no longer fully understood, layering their own legacy upon foundations already ancient. The implications stretch far beyond Egypt. If the Great Pyramid and Sphinx are older than dynastic civilization, then history itself is truncated. Humanity's memory may have been reset by catastrophe, knowledge lost and reborn. Myths of a golden age destroyed by flood, told across cultures from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, may not be fantasy, but fractured recollections of real events. In that case, Giza becomes more than a monument of Egypt. It becomes a remnant of humanity's earlier chapter, preserved against the oblivion of time. Consider the precision of the engineering. The base of the Great Pyramid is leveled to within less than an inch. The sides are aligned almost perfectly to true north, deviating by only a fraction of a degree. The stones are fitted so tightly that even today a razor blade cannot slip between them. Such perfection suggests not trial and error, but inherited knowledge, techniques passed down or rediscovered, methods we still struggle to replicate. Was it mastery of geometry, patient labor, or something more? Could resonance, magnetism, or unknown technologies have played a role? The absence of tools capable of such precision in the archaeological record only deepens the mystery. And so the plateau becomes a palimpsest, layers of meaning inscribed one upon another. For the Egyptians, it was a necropolis, a land of the dead where kings ascended to the stars. For us, it is a riddle, a structure that refuses to conform to a single story. For those who whisper of lost civilizations, it is evidence of survival, proof that before history began, humanity had already reached heights we have forgotten. The stones say nothing, yet they suggest everything, and in their silence lies the power to unsettle even the most confident historian. To walk among them is to feel time collapse. The wind stirs sand across your feet, the same wind that has blown for thousands of years. The sun glares as it did for workers who hauled blocks or for priests who raised prayers. And yet, beneath that continuity, there is dissonance, a sense that we are intruding on a mystery never meant to be solved. The pyramid's shadow lengthens, the Sphinx stares eastward, and the desert holds its breath, guarding truths that may outlast us all. There is something almost unsettling about the way the pyramids seem to defy the very erosion of time. Built of limestone blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons, they should have crumbled like so many other monuments of antiquity. Yet they endure, their geometry still sharp against the sky, their orientation still precise enough to baffle surveyors. This persistence leads some to ask, were they designed not merely as tombs, but as machines of preservation, not for bodies, but for knowledge itself? The idea of pyramids as archives may sound fanciful, but across cultures the concept of storing wisdom in stone recurs. The Mayans built stepped pyramids aligned with celestial cycles. The Mesopotamians raised ziggurats, layered platforms that mirrored the heavens. In India, temples were erected as mandalas in stone, encoding cosmology into their very floor plans. Could the Egyptian pyramids belong to this family of sacred architecture? Their form less about funerary rites than about embedding cosmic principles into the landscape? When one looks at the Great Pyramid's proportions, the ratio of its height to the perimeter of its base, mathematicians see approximations of pi and the golden ratio, numbers tied to natural harmony. Did the builders stumble upon these relationships by chance? Or were they deliberately encoding a universal order? Legends that drift through the centuries seem to support the latter. Medieval Arab manuscripts spoke of the pyramids as storehouses built before the flood, designed to safeguard the sciences of astronomy, medicine, and geometry from destruction. One tale describes how an ancient king, forewarned of catastrophe, commanded that knowledge be inscribed in stone and sealed within chambers deep in the earth. In these accounts, the pyramids are not tombs, but time capsules, messages across epochs. It is tempting to dismiss these stories as myth, yet they echo the very function of myth: to carry fragments of truth through the sieve of time. Modern explorations have occasionally brushed against these whispers. In the 1970s, a team of researchers claimed to have detected unusual energy fields within the Great Pyramid, subtle electromagnetic anomalies that seemed to concentrate at the king's chamber. Later, other experiments suggested that the pyramid's shape could influence resonance and vibration, amplifying natural frequencies. Though mainstream science remains skeptical, the notion persists that the pyramid may function like a resonant cavity, a structure that channels energy rather than entombs a body. If so, then perhaps the builders were not merely moving stone for stone's sake, but tuning a monument as if it were an instrument. Even the placement of the pyramids on the plateau stirs questions. When connected, the three pyramids of Giza map the alignment of the stars in Orion's belt with uncanny precision. This correlation is not perfect in the present sky, but would have been exact around 10,500 BC, an era long before Egypt's dynasties rose. To adherents of the Orion correlation theory, this suggests that the pyramids are far older than the pharaohs, erected in memory of a celestial age now lost. If true, it would force us to rewrite not just Egypt's history, but the timeline of civilization itself. Skeptics argue that humans are prone to seeing patterns, that aligning monuments with stars is more coincidence than intention. Yet across the globe, ancient cultures oriented their sacred sites with the heavens. Stonehenge tracks solstices. The temples of Angkor mirror constellations. The pyramids of Teotihuacan line up with celestial events. Was Egypt any different? Or was it part of a global impulse to bind the earth to the sky, to anchor human memory in cosmic rhythms? The deeper one looks, the more the desert resists clarity. Reports from explorers speak of shafts within the Great Pyramid that point directly to stars. Sirius, Orion's belt, and Thuban, the pole star of ancient times. Were these simply ventilation channels, as some claim, or were they sightlines designed to connect the soul of the departed king with the heavens? If so, then the pyramid becomes not merely a tomb or a machine, but a bridge between worlds, a stone ladder stretching from the desert floor to the celestial dome. The Sphinx, too, refuses to release its secrets. Erosion on its body suggests water damage, yet the Giza plateau has not seen such rainfall for thousands of years. Geologists like Robert Schoch have argued that the Sphinx may predate the dynasties by millennia, carved in an age when the Sahara was green and rivers still carved valleys through the land. If correct, then the Sphinx is not 4,500 years old, but perhaps 12,000, its lion's body sculpted in a wetter climate, later reshaped into a human face when dynastic kings discovered it. This theory, controversial though it is, places the origins of Giza in an epoch aligned with the end of the last ice age, a time remembered in myths as one of flood and fire. It is here that the tantalizing possibility of a lost civilization emerges most vividly. If structures at Giza truly date back 12,000 years, then they belong to a time when humanity, according to mainstream history, was still living in small hunter-gatherer groups. And yet, to leave behind monuments of such scale, such precision, would require knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and organization far beyond what we credit to that age. Could it be that an advanced culture, wiped from memory by catastrophe, once stood where deserts now stretch? The pyramids, in this view, are not just Egypt's legacy, but humanity's message in a bottle, surviving the flood of time. Such notions are dismissed by conventional historians who cling to the dynastic narrative as the safer path. But one cannot help noticing how much remains unexplained. No records detail the construction of the Great Pyramid. No tools have been found that could have shaped the hardest stones with such accuracy. No explanation suffices for the choice of site, the astronomical alignments, the geometry encoded in stone. In the silence of the evidence, imagination rushes to fill the void. And in that void, the possibility of forgotten history lingers. To walk the plateau at dusk is to feel that possibility pressing in from all sides. The stones glow gold in the dying light, the desert cools, and shadows stretch like memories across the sand. Somewhere beneath your feet may lie sealed chambers, unbroken since antiquity, holding relics of an age we no longer remember. Above, Orion rises, the same constellation that guided priests and kings, the same stars that may have inspired the builders of Giza. You sense that you are standing not just in a necropolis, but in a library written in stone, its volumes unread, its knowledge waiting for rediscovery, and the desert, as always, keeps its silence. Beneath the sand of Giza lies another mystery, one that has drawn explorers for centuries and yet remains stubbornly elusive. The possibility of hidden chambers and underground passageways. Legends speak of labyrinths below the pyramids, vast networks of tunnels leading to halls where knowledge from a forgotten world was once stored. Ancient texts hint at a hall of records, a mythical library said to preserve the wisdom of a lost age, sealed away to outlast catastrophe. For some, this is nothing more than fantasy, but for others, the hints are too numerous to ignore. In 1993, when engineers working inside the Great Pyramid sent a robotic camera into a narrow shaft leading from the Queen's chamber, they discovered something astonishing. A small stone door with copper fittings blocking the passage. This was not the kind of feature one expects in a mere ventilation channel. It suggested intentional concealment, as though the builders wanted to close off what lay beyond. A decade later, another probe drilled a tiny hole through the door, only to reveal yet another stone slab behind it, as if the pyramid's interior was designed like a series of locked boxes. What purpose did such architecture serve? Was it symbolic, ritualistic, or was it literally meant to guard a chamber of significance? The possibility of underground structures at Giza is not confined to speculation. In the early 20th century, British explorer Howard Vyse reported strange cavities beneath the plateau. In the 1990s, Egyptian authorities briefly allowed seismic surveys around the Sphinx. The results showed anomalies, large voids beneath the monument's paws and beneath the plateau itself. Though official explanations framed these as natural fissures in the limestone, some researchers claimed they matched the descriptions of the hidden halls spoken of in legend. Soon after, access to further exploration was restricted, fueling suspicions that discoveries were being suppressed. The idea of a subterranean world beneath sacred monuments is not unique to Egypt. In Mesoamerica, tunnels beneath Teotihuacan were found filled with mercury and artifacts, suggesting ritual use tied to cosmology. In Turkey, entire underground cities like Derinkuyu extend for miles, evidence of ancient people carving vast subterranean refuges. The impulse to go beneath the earth, to carve, to hide, to protect, is as old as civilization itself. Why should Egypt, with its obsession with eternity, have been any different? If anything, its priests would have been the most inclined to bury knowledge where the sands could not reach it. For those who pursue the theory of a hall of records, the link to the lost civilization of Atlantis is irresistible. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote of Atlantis as an advanced culture destroyed in a cataclysm, its memory preserved in Egyptian lore. According to some esoteric traditions, survivors of this catastrophe traveled to Egypt and encoded their wisdom into stone monuments, hiding it in chambers beneath the Sphinx. In this narrative, Giza becomes the meeting point of myth and archaeology, a place where the deepest fears and highest aspirations of humanity were etched into the desert bedrock. Mainstream Egyptology, however, remains dismissive. Scholars argue that the pyramids were tombs and nothing more, that stories of hidden libraries are the inventions of mystics and explorers eager for fame. Yet even these scholars cannot deny the gaps in the record. If the pyramids were tombs, why do they contain no funerary inscriptions, unlike nearly every other royal tomb in Egypt? Why is there no clear evidence of mummies or burial treasures inside the Great Pyramid? The silence of these chambers is deafening, and in that silence, alternate possibilities thrive. In the 21st century, new technologies have begun to probe these mysteries with greater precision. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project used Muon tomography, a technique that tracks cosmic particles passing through stone, to map hidden voids inside the Great Pyramid. To the astonishment of the scientific community, they discovered a massive unknown cavity above the Grand Gallery, a space as large as an aircraft hangar. Its purpose remains unexplained. Is it simply an architectural feature left empty for structural reasons, or is it another sealed chamber waiting to be opened? The discovery reignited debates and drew comparisons to the speculative accounts of hidden archives. Once again, the pyramids revealed that their silence conceals secrets, even in the age of lasers and particle detectors. Walking the plateau today, one can sense the layers of time pressing down like the strata beneath the sand. Tourists cluster at the Sphinx, gazing at its eroded face, unaware that beneath their feet anomalies hint at spaces still unentered. Guides tell the official stories of pharaohs and dynasties, while in the background, researchers argue over data from ground-penetrating radar, searching for chambers that may or may not exist. It is as though Giza itself resists being known fully, offering just enough to tantalize, but never enough to confirm. There is a psychological dimension to all of this. Humanity has always longed for origins, for a place where knowledge was first given, a seed point from which all cultures spread. To imagine a hall of records beneath the sands is to imagine a literal root of civilization, a place where the blueprint of humanity's forgotten story might still lie intact. Whether it exists physically matters less than the way the idea persists across time, passed from myth to manuscript to modern exploration. The very endurance of the legend suggests that something, whether material or symbolic, remains buried. Night at Giza carries its own weight of mystery. The plateau empties, the noise fades, and the desert reclaims its silence. The pyramids loom against the stars, and the Sphinx stares eastward as it has for millennia. In that silence, one can almost believe that beneath the ground, beneath the stones and the layers of forgotten history, there are chambers still waiting, filled with relics of a civilization we no longer remember. The earth holds its breath, and so do we, waiting for the day the sands finally yield their last secret. Across nearly every ancient tradition, echoes of catastrophe resound like a warning bell. Civilizations separated by oceans told stories of floods, fire from the skies, and a world remade by sudden destruction. The Sumerians preserved the tale of a deluge sent by the gods, recorded in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Hebrew Bible retold it as the story of Noah. The Maya spoke of worlds destroyed and remade, each cycle ending in devastation. In India's Rig Veda, hymns describe cosmic battles and floods that reset the order of existence. Whether these accounts are literal memories of natural disasters or symbolic allegories, they share a haunting consistency. Humanity has long believed that great knowledge must be safeguarded against inevitable ruin. This is where the pyramids and the legends of hidden chambers beneath them re-enter the story. To some, the pyramids were not primarily tombs, but monuments designed to outlast the fury of earth and sky. Their geometry, their massive stone blocks, their alignment to the stars, all suggest permanence, as though the builders were constructing not just for themselves, but for distant survivors. If a hall of records exists, it would fit this logic: a vault of memory to endure catastrophe, left for those who would rebuild civilization. Geology adds another layer to this discussion. Around 12,800 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, the planet experienced a sudden climatic upheaval known as the Younger Dryas. Temperatures plummeted, megafauna went extinct, and human cultures struggled to adapt. Some scientists argue this event was triggered by a comet impact, its fragments striking the ice sheets of North America and unleashing torrents of meltwater across the globe. The floods would have swallowed coastlines, drowned fertile lands, and obliterated early settlements. To those who lived through it, it must have felt like the end of the world. If an advanced culture had existed before this time, much of its knowledge could have been lost in the deluge, preserved only where it was deliberately hidden. The Sphinx itself bears marks that fuel this line of thought. Geologist Robert Schoch has argued that the deep vertical weathering on its body is not the result of wind and sand, but of heavy rainfall. Egypt has not seen such rains for thousands of years, only in a time before the desert, when the climate was wetter. If he is correct, the Sphinx may predate dynastic Egypt, reaching back to an earlier epoch, perhaps even before the Younger Dryas catastrophe. That would mean the monument was carved by a people whose memory has been erased, except in stone. Mainstream scholars dispute Schoch's findings, but the image remains vivid. A colossal guardian staring across millennia, scarred by storms that no one remembers. Why, then, would ancient builders have aligned their monument so carefully with the stars? The Great Pyramid points almost perfectly to true north, its shafts aligned with specific constellations at the time of construction. To civilizations that believed in cycles of destruction, the heavens were a clock marking not just time, but destiny. By fixing monuments to the stars, they were anchoring their legacy to something eternal. Some argue that this was less about ritual and more about communication across epochs, a way of saying to future humanity, we knew what was coming, and we prepared for it. The motif of catastrophe is woven not only into myth, but into archaeology. At the site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to around 11,600 years ago, stone carvings depict animals and celestial symbols that some researchers interpret as records of a comet impact. One pillar shows what looks like falling objects from the sky, combined with a vulture carrying a sphere, a possible depiction of death descending from above. If this interpretation is correct, then the builders of Göbekli Tepe were recording a cosmic disaster that reshaped their world. That disaster corresponds eerily with the timing of the Younger Dryas. And if they remembered, perhaps Egypt remembered too, encoding that same knowledge in their colossal stone projects. Skeptics argue that connecting these myths to specific geological events is tenuous. Myths, they say, exaggerate and distort. They are not scientific records. But one must ask, why do so many cultures share such similar themes, spread across time and space? Why do they all insist that destruction came suddenly from water or fire, and that wisdom had to be preserved? Legends of Atlantis, of sunken lands, of vanished peoples, these may all be cultural memories of the same traumatic horizon, refracted through different traditions. In the Egyptian context, the pyramids may represent more than funerary monuments. They may be fortresses of survival. Imagine priests watching the skies, knowing from cycles of stars or oral traditions that disaster would one day return. Imagine them ordering vast stone projects, not simply to glorify a pharaoh, but to anchor their society against oblivion. A sealed chamber beneath the Sphinx or the Great Pyramid, containing texts, tools, or astronomical records, would be their attempt to communicate across thousands of years to us. The resonance of this idea is powerful, not just archaeologically, but emotionally. It forces us to reconsider our place in time. If ancient peoples preserved knowledge against catastrophe, are we not in the same position today? We face threats of climate change, asteroid impacts, and nuclear war. The pyramids may be not only relics of the past, but warnings, reminders that civilizations are fragile, that knowledge is always one disaster away from being lost. They stand as symbols of continuity, but also as monuments to fear. A fear that the world we know can vanish overnight. As night deepens on the Giza plateau and the stars wheel silently above, it is not difficult to imagine the ancients watching the same constellations with dread and reverence. They built in stone because stone endures when flesh and memory do not. Whether or not a hall of records lies beneath the sands, the pyramids themselves are already records. Records of a mindset, of a people obsessed with eternity, of a culture that feared the wrath of earth and sky, yet dreamed of surviving it. In that sense, the catastrophe they prepared for is not just a matter of geology, but a mirror held up to us, asking, when our turn comes, what will we leave behind? From the beginning, the pyramids have not only been about earth, but about the sky. Their immense bulk rises from the desert, but their geometry points upward, like mountains carved by human will to mirror celestial order. Ancient Egyptians saw the heavens as the eternal realm of the gods, where the soul of the pharaoh would ascend after death. But perhaps the alignments of Giza suggest something more, a dialogue between humanity and the cosmos, a coded message left in stone for future ages. The most striking correlation is the so-called Orion correlation theory, which proposes that the three pyramids of Giza were laid out to mirror the three stars of Orion's belt, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. In Egyptian cosmology, Orion was linked to Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. To align monuments with Orion was not merely symbolic. It tied the pharaoh's legacy to a cosmic cycle of renewal. The pyramids, in this reading, became more than tombs. They became resurrection machines, ensuring the king's rebirth in the eternal order of the stars. Critics argue that the match between the pyramids and Orion's belt is imperfect, but the visual parallel remains powerful, and it raises the question: why were these structures so carefully positioned in relation to the heavens at all? Beyond Orion, the Great Pyramid itself contains narrow shafts, angled precisely to point toward specific stars. One shaft aligns with Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, associated with the goddess Isis. Another aligns with Orion's belt, reinforcing the Osiris connection. To the Egyptians, these were not random alignments but celestial pathways, allowing the soul to ascend directly into the divine. Yet from another perspective, these shafts might also have served as markers, astronomical indicators locking the pyramid's design into a specific moment in time. By encoding star positions, the builders may have been creating a time capsule, ensuring that anyone who deciphered their design would know exactly when it had been built. What is remarkable is the precision with which the pyramids reflect true north. The Great Pyramid's alignment is within a fraction of a degree, so accurate that even modern builders, with all their instruments, would struggle to achieve it with blocks weighing tons. How did the ancients achieve such exactness? One theory holds that they used the circumpolar stars, stars that never set, as fixed points of orientation. By watching these eternal stars, they could align their monuments with a cosmic axis. In doing so, they symbolically tied their earthly kingdom to the eternal order of the sky, making the land of Egypt itself an image of the heavens. To the casual eye, such alignments might seem purely religious, the product of myth and ritual. But when we look across the globe, we see the same pattern repeated. At Teotihuacan in Mexico, the pyramids align with astronomical events, their avenues oriented to the rising of specific stars. At Stonehenge in England, megaliths capture the solstices. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the temples align with equinoxes and lunar cycles. It is as though ancient peoples everywhere were driven by the same obsession: to root their civilizations not only in earth but in sky, to bind human life to celestial rhythms. This obsession suggests something deeper than ritual. It hints at a recognition that cycles in the heavens govern cycles on earth, and perhaps even that catastrophe is written in the stars. Indeed, some researchers propose that ancient builders used these alignments not just to honor gods, but to track long-term astronomical cycles, such as the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble of Earth's axis that changes the positions of stars over thousands of years. If the Egyptians were aware of this cycle, they would have known that the heavens shift over vast spans of time, and that cosmic events repeat. Catastrophes too might repeat, governed by celestial patterns. Aligning pyramids with stars, then, could have been more than a spiritual act. It could have been a scientific record, a way of preserving knowledge of cycles that determined both destiny and disaster. This interpretation casts the pyramids as a kind of cosmic library. Their stones speak of geometry, their alignments of astronomy, their myths of rebirth. Taken together, they suggest that the builders were less concerned with glorifying individual kings than with embedding knowledge into the fabric of the landscape. For later generations, ours included, the message would be clear. Look upward, understand the cycles, prepare for what returns. The mystery deepens when we consider that the pyramids are not isolated. Stretching down the Nile are dozens of pyramids, each tied to religious and cosmic themes. Some are crumbling ruins, others still stand tall, but all share the same underlying impulse: to connect heaven and earth. This network of monuments may have functioned as a map, not only of the stars but of memory itself. If the Great Pyramid was the centerpiece, then the others were supporting notes in a vast architectural symphony, echoing a world view in which time and space were inseparable, and the fate of humanity was bound to the stars. And yet, despite centuries of study, the full purpose of these alignments remains elusive. Mainstream Egyptologists emphasize religion and ritual. Alternative researchers argue for lost science, hidden knowledge encoded in stone. Both may be correct. In the ancient world, science and religion were not separate categories, but overlapping ways of seeing. To align with Orion was at once a gesture of faith and a calculation of astronomy. To carve shafts toward Sirius was both an act of devotion and an act of record-keeping. The pyramids remind us that knowledge is never singular. It is woven from myth, observation, and meaning. As twilight settles over Giza, the stars emerge one by one, just as they did for those who stood here thousands of years ago. To the ancients, each light in the sky was a sign, a guide, a reminder of eternity. To us, they are still mysterious, still untouchable, still compelling us to ask why our ancestors labored to mirror them in stone. Whether the pyramids are tombs, observatories, or time capsules, they remain bridges between worlds, between the earth we walk and the heavens we imagine, between the past we think we know and the mysteries that refuse to vanish. If the pyramids were intended as silent messages to the future, then it is no surprise that later generations have endlessly reinterpreted their meaning. Across centuries, the great monuments of Giza became more than relics of a vanished age. They became canvases upon which cultures projected their deepest fears and hopes. For secret societies, mystics, and scholars of the Renaissance, the pyramids were not tombs, but vessels of forbidden knowledge, designed to conceal wisdom too dangerous to be left in plain sight. During the Middle Ages, travelers from the Islamic world often speculated about the pyramids' hidden chambers. Some chroniclers described them as libraries of stone, repositories built by ancient kings to safeguard wisdom before the flood. The notion that the pyramids held secret scrolls or devices resonated with a deep human instinct, that the ancients knew something we had lost. Al-Makrizi, a 15th-century Egyptian historian, recounted stories that the pyramids were constructed by a pre-dynastic king named Surid, who foresaw a great catastrophe of fire and flood. To preserve the sciences of astronomy, medicine, and magic, he built the pyramids as indestructible vaults. Whether legend or invention, the tale reveals how deeply people wanted to believe the pyramids held more than stone. They held memory. As Europe emerged from its medieval darkness, the Renaissance revived this hunger for lost wisdom. Scholars influenced by Hermeticism, a body of mystical writings attributed to the mythical Hermes Trismegistus, saw Egypt as the cradle of divine knowledge. To them, the pyramids were not graves, but monuments to eternal truths, expressions of sacred geometry through which the ancients encoded cosmic harmony. Architects and alchemists studied their proportions, convinced that within their geometry lay secrets of creation itself. The angle of the pyramid's slope, the relationship between its base and height, even the proportions of its chambers were read as messages, clues to a universal order waiting to be rediscovered. By the 18th century, Freemasons embraced these ideas, weaving the pyramids into their symbolic universe. In Masonic lore, the unfinished pyramid represented humanity's eternal striving toward enlightenment. Its apex, missing in physical stone but implied in meaning, symbolized the ultimate truth that remained hidden. To stand before the Great Pyramid was to stand before the greatest mystery of all, the threshold between ignorance and illumination. That is why, even today, the pyramid appears on the Great Seal of the United States, crowned with the Eye of Providence. A monument of pharaohs was transformed into a symbol of modern power, an emblem of secret wisdom guiding the destiny of nations. But the fascination did not stop with symbols. 19th-century explorers penetrated the chambers of the Great Pyramid with renewed vigor, searching not merely for treasure, but for meaning. In 1859, the Scottish astronomer Charles Piazzi Smythe argued that the Great Pyramid was divinely inspired, a Bible in stone. He measured its passages with obsessive care, convinced that its dimensions predicted future events. He believed that the inch measurements of its corridors mapped out a prophetic timeline of human history, from the Exodus to the birth of Christ to the coming end times. Though his theories were later dismissed by scholars, they inspired a wave of pyramidology that persists to this day. In the 20th century, the pyramids entered the realm of conspiracy. As science uncovered their astronomical alignments and architectural precision, alternative researchers began to suggest that they were more than tombs. They were machines. Some imagined them as power plants, harvesting natural energies from the earth and sky. Others claimed they were transmitters of information, broadcasting messages across time and space. In this view, the Great Pyramid was less a monument than a device, a tool crafted by a civilization with knowledge far beyond what we attribute to the ancient Egyptians. The blending of secret society symbolism and modern speculation created a fertile ground for conspiracy theories. Some argued that hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx, or within the pyramids, still concealed records of Atlantis, the legendary lost civilization described by Plato. Others suggested that the pyramids were constructed with the aid of extraterrestrials, beings who arrived on Earth to guide humanity's first steps toward civilization. To mainstream historians, such ideas remain fringe. But to millions of seekers, they offer a tantalizing alternative: that the pyramids are not relics of the past, but evidence of a forgotten chapter in human history. The persistence of these theories speaks to the pyramid's unique power. Unlike ruins swallowed by jungle or temples lost to erosion, the pyramids endure, unyielding, their forms almost intact after millennia. They stand as puzzles too large to ignore, beckoning interpretation. Each age, each culture has filled their silence with meaning, as though unable to accept that such immense monuments could be only what they seem. Their very endurance compels us to believe they conceal something eternal. Perhaps that is their true function, not to preserve scrolls in sealed chambers, but to preserve questions in the human mind. To look at the Great Pyramid is to feel small, to sense both the vastness of time and the fragility of memory. We want it to tell us a story, and so we invent stories, from pharaohs' tombs to Atlantean vaults to alien machines. The pyramid does not correct us. It remains silent, unyielding, a mirror to our imagination. And yet, the possibility remains that beneath the legends, beneath the layers of speculation, there is a kernel of truth. The discovery of hidden voids within the Great Pyramid in recent years, detected by cosmic ray scans, reminds us that the monument still keeps secrets. What lies within those voids? Empty chambers, structural necessities, or something deliberately concealed? Until we know, the pyramids will remain both monuments of stone and monuments of mystery, at once the greatest achievement of ancient Egypt and the most fertile ground for our collective imagination. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the pyramids entered a new phase of investigation. No longer were they just the domain of treasure hunters, esoteric theorists, or mystics. Now, they became subjects of cutting-edge science. Archaeology, once defined by picks, shovels, and torches, was suddenly aided by particle physics, remote sensing, and digital modeling. With these tools, scholars hoped not only to understand how the pyramids were built, but also to reveal what might still lie hidden inside them. In 2017, the world was startled by the announcement of a discovery inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu. A team of international researchers used a technique known as Muon tomography, essentially a cosmic ray scanner, to peer through the pyramid's immense stone bulk. Muons are subatomic particles produced when cosmic rays strike the Earth's atmosphere, and they can penetrate rock far better than conventional X-rays. By placing detectors inside and around the pyramid, scientists created a kind of ghostly image of its interior. What they found shook assumptions. A massive void, at least 100 feet long, hovering above the Grand Gallery. The discovery was tantalizing, but frustratingly ambiguous. Was the void a hidden chamber, a construction cavity, or something entirely unexpected? Egyptologists were cautious, noting that ancient builders often left spaces to relieve pressure or shift weight. But the sheer scale of the void reignited speculation. For those who had long believed in lost chambers or secret archives, the finding seemed like vindication. The Great Pyramid, it appeared, still had stories to tell. Beyond Muons, other technologies have deepened the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys around the Sphinx have suggested anomalies beneath its paws, spaces that may or may not be natural cavities. Some claim these could be the long-rumored Hall of Records, a mythical library said to contain the knowledge of a forgotten civilization. Mainstream scholars remain skeptical, but the data leave room for interpretation. The sands of Giza, disturbed by centuries of excavation, still resist giving up all their secrets. Digital archaeology has also transformed the way we see the pyramids. High-resolution 3D models allow researchers to virtually dismantle and reassemble them stone by stone. These reconstructions reveal subtleties invisible to the naked eye, minute alignments with stars, patterns in block placement, and mathematical relationships hidden in the architecture. Each discovery deepens the sense that these monuments were more than mere piles of stone. They were intentional, precise, and guided by principles we only partly understand. Yet, the scientific revelations coexist with controversy. When the Scan Pyramids team announced the discovery of the void, debates erupted among Egyptologists. Some argued the announcement was premature, that it courted media attention without enough data. Others embraced the possibility, pointing out that if such a vast space remained undetected for centuries, what else might lie concealed? The pyramids, once thought thoroughly explored, suddenly seemed vast and unknowable again, Meanwhile, modern theorists outside the academic mainstream seized on these findings as proof of their claims. Alternative researchers suggested the void might house ancient machines or sealed vaults of lost technology. Theories about Atlanteans, alien architects, or time-traveling builders reappeared, amplified by documentaries and online forums. Once again, the pyramids became a stage where science and speculation performed side by side, each feeding off the other's energy. But perhaps the true significance of these modern discoveries lies not in confirming wild theories, but in reminding us of the scale of our ignorance. For centuries, we have dug, mapped, and measured, yet the Great Pyramid still surprises us. Its endurance across millennia is matched by its capacity to resist final explanation. Every answer leads to new questions, and each technology reveals how much more there is to learn. Some archaeologists argue that this is precisely the genius of the pyramids. They were designed to endure, to baffle, to inspire awe long after their builders were gone. By aligning so precisely with cardinal points and celestial bodies, by concealing chambers within chambers, they ensured that generations to come would never quite solve them. The pyramids, in this sense, are not merely tombs or monuments. They are time machines, not in the science fiction sense of transporting bodies, but in their ability to transport minds across ages, binding us to their mystery. The modern fascination with scanning, imaging, and probing also reveals something about ourselves. We are driven not only to preserve the past, but to decode it, to believe that buried within ancient stone is a secret capable of reshaping the present. The void above the Grand Gallery may turn out to be empty space, a structural feature without hidden treasures. And yet, the very act of searching transforms the way we relate to the pyramids. They remain not only relics of ancient engineering, but active participants in human imagination, still shaping our culture, our science, and our dreams. The image of scientists standing with particle detectors inside the same corridors where priests once carried the body of Khufu is striking. It is as though two civilizations, one ancient, one modern, are meeting in silence, each seeking to grasp the eternal. The builders, with their copper chisels and ramps, left behind monuments that defy time. We, with our cosmic rays and digital scans, seek to decode them. Both acts are expressions of the same impulse, the desire to reach beyond the limits of mortality, to touch the infinite. And so, in the 21st century, the pyramids continue their dual existence. To archaeologists, they are data sets, structures to be mapped and explained. To seekers of mystery, they are enigmas, evidence of hidden histories. To humanity as a whole, they are mirrors, reflecting both our ingenuity and our longing for meaning. Each muon that passes through their stone bulk, each scan that reveals a shadowy void, is a reminder that the pyramids are not done speaking. Their silence is not emptiness, it is an invitation. The pyramids are not only monuments of stone, they are monuments of the imagination. For centuries, they have transcended their physical reality to become symbols woven into the cultural fabric of the modern world. They appear on postcards, in films, in novels, in video games. They inspire conspiracy theories, religious movements, and national pride. Few structures in human history carry such a weight of meaning, and fewer still manage to speak so differently to so many audiences. In the 19th century, as steamships and railways opened Egypt to Western travelers, the pyramids became icons of exotic adventure. Writers like Gustave Flaubert and Mark Twain described their first encounters with awe and irony, transforming the Giza plateau into a stage where East met West. Tourists posed for photographs, clambered over blocks, even picnicked at the summit. The pyramids were no longer the solemn guardians of pharaohs. They were curiosities in a rapidly shrinking world. Yet, even as they became accessible, they retained an aura of mystery. Visitors reported sensations of dizziness, of timelessness, as if the stones themselves carried memory. By the 20th century, the pyramids had migrated into cinema. Hollywood, with its hunger for spectacle, turned them into backdrops for adventure and horror alike. From the early silent films to modern blockbusters like the Mummy franchise, the pyramids embodied the allure of danger and discovery. They were places where curses lurked, where hidden chambers promised riches or doom. Even when the stories bore little resemblance to Egyptian history, the imagery was irresistible. Moonlight over limestone, sandstorms swirling around colossal silhouettes. The sense that beneath the surface of the desert, something ancient and powerful was waiting. In literature, too, the pyramids became metaphors. For poets, they symbolized endurance, the attempt of humans to defy death. For novelists, they served as riddles, structures whose hidden chambers paralleled the hidden recesses of the human mind. Science fiction writers imagined them as alien landing pads or as energy collectors, transmitting power across space. Each reimagining added another layer to their myth. The pyramids were no longer simply Egyptian. They became universal, belonging to all who dreamed of mystery. The conspiracy theories, however, gave them a darker kind of immortality. Beginning with fringe writers in the mid-20th century, the idea spread that the pyramids contained secret knowledge, blueprints for free energy, maps of lost continents, or warnings of future catastrophes. Some claimed the Great Pyramid encoded the measurements of the Earth, even the speed of light, as if its builders had knowledge centuries ahead of their time. Others linked it to prophecies, predicting the end of the world or the return of ancient gods. Though scholars dismissed these claims, they thrived in popular culture, feeding television specials, documentaries, and internet forums. The persistence of such theories reveals something profound about human psychology. The pyramids are so vast, so improbable, that we instinctively feel they must contain more than what meets the eye. We project into them our hopes and fears, our hunger for transcendence. For some, they are evidence of divine intervention. For others, proof of alien visitors. In either case, they serve the same function. They make us feel connected to something beyond ourselves. Nationally, the pyramids are also symbols of identity. For Egypt, they are emblems of heritage, displayed proudly on currency, stamps, and tourist brochures. They stand as proof that Egypt gave birth to one of the world's first great civilizations. For the broader Arab world, they are sources of pride, reminders of a time when their lands were the cradle of science, architecture, and culture. Yet the pyramids also carry a burden, the responsibility of preservation. Tourism sustains the Egyptian economy, but it also threatens the monuments with wear and pollution. The challenge of balancing accessibility with protection has become a defining struggle of the modern era. And yet, despite commercialization, the pyramids retain their aura. A traveler arriving at Giza today, stepping away from the chaos of Cairo traffic, still experiences a moment of silence when the pyramids rise into view. Photographs cannot capture the scale. Each block, worn and weathered, suggests hands that shaped it thousands of years ago. The desert sun burns the horizon, and the pyramids, defiant against time, remind us that civilizations may fall, but memory can endure in stone. Interestingly, the pyramids have also influenced modern science in unexpected ways. Engineers study their shape for inspiration in designing stable structures. Architects draw on their geometry to experiment with energy efficiency. Psychologists investigate why their silhouette evokes such a deep response in the human mind. Even NASA scientists, searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, have debated whether artificial structures on other planets might resemble pyramids. Simple, durable, unmistakable. This intertwining of past and present is perhaps the greatest legacy of the pyramids. They are not fossils, locked in ancient history. They are dynamic, alive in the stories we tell and the images we create. They remind us that history is not a closed book, but a conversation across time. The pharaohs who commissioned them sought eternal remembrance. In that, they succeeded. But they could never have predicted how their monuments would shape the dreams of people thousands of years later, in lands they never imagined, in languages they never spoke. The pyramids, in the end, are both mirrors and masks. They reflect our need to explain the inexplicable, to give shape to the eternal. They also conceal, reminding us that no matter how much we dig or scan, some mysteries will always remain. Perhaps that is their greatest gift, not knowledge, but wonder. For wonder is what drives us to look up at the stars, to carve meaning into stone, to build not only for ourselves, but for generations unborn. And so in our films, in our novels, in our theories and dreams, the pyramids continue to rise. They are more than monuments of Egypt. They are monuments of humanity. Silent, enduring, enigmatic. They remind us that we too are builders of stories, architects of meaning. And in the shadow of their limestone slopes, we glimpse both the fragility of our time and the possibility that something of us, too, may endure. While the pyramids are celebrated as national icons and cultural symbols, they also occupy a more elusive realm, the sphere of spirituality and esoteric traditions. For centuries, seekers of hidden wisdom have looked to their massive forms not just as monuments of stone, but as vessels of truth. The Great Pyramid in particular has been imagined as a kind of sacred library, encoding mysteries meant only for those prepared to understand them. The roots of this belief stretch back to antiquity. In late antiquity and the early Middle Ages, Arab chroniclers described the pyramids as storehouses of wisdom, said to contain astrological charts, prophecies, and texts from civilizations destroyed by flood or fire. Some even claimed the pyramids were constructed to preserve the knowledge of Atlantis, the mythical island described by Plato. Though these stories had no archaeological basis, they carried an undeniable appeal. The idea that within the stone chambers lay the keys to understanding time itself. By the Renaissance, European scholars and mystics adopted similar notions. Alchemists studied the proportions of the Great Pyramid, convinced its dimensions contained formulas for transformation. The discipline of pyramidology began to take shape, asserting that the measurements of its base and height encoded biblical prophecies or even the date of the apocalypse. For those drawn to esoteric traditions, the pyramid was not merely a tomb, it was a temple, a cipher, a cosmic clock. This fascination intensified in the 19th century. As European colonial powers extended their influence into Egypt, secret societies like the Freemasons wove the pyramid into their rituals. To them, it symbolized the ascent of the soul, the movement from ignorance at the broad base toward enlightenment at the narrow summit. The unfinished pyramid, later adopted on the Great Seal of the United States, became an emblem of progress, an eternal building project in which humanity seeks completion. Above it, the all-seeing eye suggested divine oversight, a reminder that human endeavor is always tied to cosmic order. In the 20th century, New Age spirituality embraced the pyramids with even greater fervor. Practitioners claimed the pyramid shape itself possessed inherent power, capable of preserving food, sharpening razors, or enhancing meditation. Small-scale models of the Great Pyramid were sold around the world, marketed as tools for channeling energy. The phrase pyramid power became a cultural fad, blending mysticism with the promise of scientific discovery. Skeptics scoffed, but the movement reflected a deeper truth. People longed to believe that the ancient builders had tapped into forces modern science had yet to rediscover. Some spiritual traditions went further, linking the Great Pyramid to celestial alignments. Its orientation to the cardinal points of the compass, its shafts pointing toward specific stars, and its relation to the Orion constellation all fueled the belief that it was more than an earthly structure. It was a bridge between heaven and earth. The very shape of the pyramid, rising from a wide base to a sharp apex, evoked ascent, transcendence, and the convergence of matter and spirit. For those engaged in meditation or ritual practice, sitting within a pyramid model symbolized alignment with cosmic energies, a chance to harmonize with the universe itself. Psychologists studying these practices noted something intriguing. Regardless of whether pyramid power had measurable effects, the belief in it often produced real experiences. People reported heightened focus, calmness, or visionary dreams. The pyramid, it seemed, operated as a symbol of the mind's capacity to transform experience into meaning. Just as the pharaohs had built them as stairways to eternity, modern seekers used them as stairways to altered states of consciousness. At the same time, more orthodox religious groups found in the pyramids both inspiration and challenge. Christian interpreters, beginning in the 19th century, argued that the Great Pyramid was a Bible in stone, its dimensions reflecting biblical chronology. Some claimed it predicted the coming of Christ or the end times. Though mainstream theology rejected such interpretations, they spread widely among millenarian movements, adding fuel to the imagination of believers. The pyramids also became touchstones for Afrocentric spiritual movements, which reclaimed them as proof of Africa's ancient genius. Leaders of Pan-Africanism and later Afrocentric scholars emphasized that the pyramids were not products of outsiders or lost civilizations, but of Africans themselves. In their teachings, the pyramids symbolized resilience, identity, and the continuity of Black heritage. Standing tall against colonial distortions, they became emblems of empowerment and ancestral pride. In the contemporary era, the pyramids continue to inspire eclectic spiritual practices. Yoga retreats are staged in their shadow, combining ancient Indian philosophy, with Egyptian mystique. Meditation groups gather at dawn, seeking alignment with the rising sun as it once fell upon the pyramid's limestone casing. For some, the pyramids are planetary chakras, nodes in a global network of sacred sites that channel energy across continents. For others, they are reminders of humanity's potential to transcend division, pointing upward toward a unity of spirit. What unites all these perspectives is the sense that the pyramids are not exhausted by archaeology alone. No matter how many measurements are taken, no matter how many chambers are scanned, they continue to resist closure. They invite interpretations as vast as the desert sky, each one reflecting the hopes, anxieties, and yearnings of its age. For the pharaohs, they were gates to eternity. For medieval chroniclers, they were vaults of lost wisdom. For mystics, they were diagrams of enlightenment. For modern seekers, they are tools for personal transformation. And perhaps this is their deepest secret. The pyramids endure not because of what they contain, but because of what they inspire. They are mirrors of the human spirit, capable of reflecting back whatever we most desire to find. Whether that be prophecy, power, or peace, the pyramids provide a stage upon which our inner dramas unfold. As night falls over the Giza plateau, stars emerge above the desert, and Orion rises once more on the horizon. For some, this is coincidence. For others, it is confirmation that the pyramid is not just a monument of stone, but a message across time, reminding us that the quest for meaning is as old as civilization itself. In recent decades, the pyramids have entered a new phase of study, no longer only the province of archaeologists with brushes and notebooks, but of physicists, engineers, and data scientists armed with technology that would have seemed like sorcery to earlier generations. From the sky, from the ground, and even from within the stones themselves, advanced tools are now peering into the heart of these ancient structures, seeking answers to questions that have lingered for millennia. One of the most revolutionary techniques to be applied is cosmic ray muon scanning. Muons are subatomic particles created when cosmic rays from outer space collide with Earth's atmosphere. They rain down constantly, passing through solid matter at predictable rates. Dense materials like stone slow them more than empty space, so by measuring how many muons pass through different parts of a structure, scientists can create a kind of X-ray image of its interior. Applied to the Great Pyramid, this method has revealed startling anomalies. In 2017, researchers announced the discovery of a large void above the Grand Gallery, a space at least 30 meters long. Whether it is a hidden chamber, a structural feature, or something else entirely, remains unknown, but its mere existence proves that even the most studied monument on Earth still guards secrets. Complementing this particle physics approach are satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar. From orbit, satellites can detect subtle variations in the Earth's surface, revealing buried walls, roads, or foundations invisible to the naked eye. Around the Giza plateau, these techniques have mapped out long-lost quarries, workers' settlements, and possible ceremonial avenues leading to the pyramids. Beneath the sands, radar pulses have identified cavities and tunnels, some of which align with ancient texts that speak of hidden chambers. The dream of finding an archive of knowledge sealed away by the ancients remains tantalizing, even if most anomalies turn out to be natural voids or simple construction features. Laser scanning, or LiDAR, has also transformed the study of these monuments. By sweeping lasers across the stone surfaces, scientists can build hyper-precise three-dimensional models. These models allow them to analyze construction techniques with extraordinary detail. The angles of individual blocks, the wear patterns on casing stones, the alignment of passages down to the millimeter. They can simulate how light and shadow would have fallen on the pyramid thousands of years ago during solstices or stellar risings, revealing whether alignments were intentional or coincidental. In this way, LiDAR turns the pyramid into a virtual laboratory, one that researchers can revisit again and again without ever disturbing the actual stones. But perhaps the most significant revelation of modern technology is not a single discovery, but a shift in perspective. The pyramids are increasingly seen not as isolated marvels, but as parts of a broader system. Satellite images reveal how they connect to surrounding temples, causeways, and tombs, forming a sacred landscape aligned with both the Nile and the heavens. Geological surveys show that the placement of the pyramids may have been chosen to exploit natural ridges of bedrock, reducing the amount of stone required. In other words, the builders combined engineering brilliance with careful observation of their environment, a synergy of human design and natural setting. This integrated view has also redefined our understanding of the labor force. Traditional images of slaves toiling under the lash have given way to evidence of skilled workers organized into rotating crews, living in purpose-built villages nearby. Excavations of these settlements reveal bakeries, breweries, medical facilities, and hieroglyphic inscriptions that proudly record the names of work gangs. Far from being forced labor, the construction seems to have been a national project, drawing participants from across Egypt in a grand collective effort. Modern technology helps us see these traces more clearly, but it also forces us to reconsider the social dynamics behind the stones. Of course, not all discoveries resolve mysteries. Some deepen them. Thermal imaging of the Great Pyramid has revealed unexplained hot spots on its surface, suggesting hidden cavities or variations in material density. Seismic surveys have hinted at possible chambers beneath the Sphinx, echoing age-old legends of a hidden library. Yet every time technology seems on the verge of confirming a spectacular theory, the results stop short, leaving just enough ambiguity to fuel further speculation. It is as if the pyramids refuse to surrender their essence entirely, offering tantalizing glimpses but never full disclosure. Critics caution that advanced tools can generate false hope. A void detected by muons might be nothing more than a gap between construction layers. A radar echo could be an ancient fault in the rock. But even when the results are less dramatic than imagined, they remind us of a crucial point. The pyramids are dynamic subjects of study, not static relics. Each new generation brings fresh methods, and with them, fresh interpretations. The pyramids adapt to our tools as much as we adapt our tools to them. Beyond Egypt, these technologies are also reshaping how we view ancient civilizations more broadly. LiDAR in Central America has revealed vast networks of Mayan cities hidden under jungle canopies. Radar in Cambodia has exposed the true scale of Angkor. These discoveries place the Egyptian pyramids in a global context, reminding us that humanity's drive to build monumental landscapes was not unique, but part of a shared impulse across cultures. The pyramids remain singular in scale and preservation, yet they belong to a larger human story of ambition, ritual, and memory. What makes the Giza pyramids stand apart, however, is their resilience in the face of time. While other great monuments have crumbled, been buried, or lost to vegetation, the pyramids stand exposed, challenging, and commanding. Modern technology now circles them like vultures of light and data, trying to extract their secrets. But the deeper irony is that the more we learn, the more we realize how much remains hidden. Perhaps that is the true power of the pyramids, their ability to remain just out of reach. They allow us to project our highest hopes and most audacious theories, but they never collapse into certainty. Technology, no matter how advanced, cannot strip them from mystery. Instead, it adds new layers, new questions, new thresholds of wonder. As the sun rises over the Giza plateau and satellites orbit high above, beams of light, particles, and radio waves converge upon the pyramids. Some penetrate stone, some bounce back, some vanish into silence. The monuments absorb them all, just as they have absorbed centuries of speculation, worship, and debate. And still they stand, massive and mute, their angled sides pointing upward, as if to remind us that mystery itself may be the most enduring gift they offer. By the 20th century, the pyramids had transcended their physical presence in the desert and entered the collective imagination of the modern world. No longer were they solely the subject of archaeological journals or academic disputes. They became symbols, metaphors, and backdrops for stories told across continents. They appeared in novels, films, and comic books, invoked as both mystical monuments and timeless enigmas. The Great Pyramid of Giza, in particular, became a shorthand for mystery itself, a visual code that could instantly suggest hidden knowledge, cosmic alignments, or lost civilizations. Hollywood quickly seized upon this imagery. In the early days of cinema, filmmakers set mummies shambling through pyramid corridors, curses echoing in candle-lit tombs, and adventurers racing to uncover treasures before the sands reclaimed them. The pyramids provided atmosphere, an exotic blend of grandeur and danger, where ancient traps and sacred guardians blurred the line between archaeology and fantasy. Though scholars often groaned at the inaccuracies, the allure was undeniable. Millions who had never seen Egypt came to know its pyramids through flickering reels, associating them with both romance and dread. Literature was no less captivated. From the late Victorian period onward, the pyramids appeared in works of speculative fiction that tied them to alien visitations, esoteric brotherhoods, or apocalyptic prophecies. In these stories, the stone blocks were not just construction feats, but repositories of cosmic truth, left for humanity to decode when it reached a certain level of maturity. Writers drew upon real discoveries, the opening of hidden shafts, the uncovering of royal mummies, but they expanded these with imaginative leaps, transforming archaeology into allegory. The result was a blending of fact and myth that shaped popular perceptions for generations. Even in everyday culture, the pyramids seeped into symbols of power and permanence. Corporations adopted them in logos, governments borrowed their geometry for monuments, and artists painted them as metaphors for eternity. In the modern mind, the pyramid became more than a tomb. It was a universal shape, both stable and ascendant, embodying the idea of reaching upward while rooted firmly in the earth. The connection to Egypt was sometimes lost in this translation, but the aura of mystery remained intact. Of course, this cultural saturation also bred conspiracy theories. Some insisted the pyramids were not built by Egyptians at all, but by Atlanteans, extraterrestrials, or survivors of a prehistoric cataclysm. Fringe authors pointed to the precision of the alignments, the enormity of the stones, and the supposed impossibility of the task. They wove narratives of ancient power sources, hidden prophecies, or lost technologies, often ignoring mountains of archaeological evidence in favor of speculative connections. To mainstream historians, these ideas were frustrating diversions, yet they also demonstrated just how magnetic the pyramids were. Even falsehoods could not diminish their draw. In fact, they amplified it, ensuring that debate never ceased. Tourism reinforced this global fascination. As travel became easier in the 20th century, visitors from every continent flocked to Egypt, standing before the pyramids in awe. For many, the experience was less about historical detail and more about presence, the sheer scale, the heat of the stones under the sun, the sensation of being dwarfed by something so ancient. Guides spun stories that mixed fact with legend, knowing that travelers craved not only knowledge, but also wonder. In the process, the pyramids became living participants in the modern economy, sustaining hotels, markets, and industries built on their eternal appeal. In the world of art and music, the pyramids inspired everything from abstract paintings to rock albums. They appeared in psychedelic posters, jazz compositions, and surrealist canvases. The geometry of their forms resonated with musicians seeking transcendence and with artists searching for archetypes of human ambition. Even architects borrowed their silhouette, reimagining it in glass, steel, and concrete. The pyramid became both ancient and modern. Its outline is recognizable as the cross or the crescent, capable of evoking mystery without a single word. Technology expanded this cultural impact further. With the rise of television, the pyramids were broadcast into living rooms worldwide. Documentaries narrated by authoritative voices speculated on construction methods, while dramatizations staged elaborate theories about hidden chambers. Later, the internet allowed speculation to multiply exponentially. Forums, videos, and digital reconstructions spread ideas both scholarly and eccentric. In memes and online debates, the pyramids became symbols of either ancient brilliance or cosmic conspiracy. In both cases, they refused to fade. Even video games embraced the mystique. Virtual adventurers now explore digital tombs, decode hieroglyphs, and battle fictional guardians, extending the pyramid's reach into interactive realms. Younger generations who might never read a scholarly article still absorb the aura of the pyramids through pixels and storylines. The balance between history and entertainment remains delicate, but the effect is undeniable. The pyramids are continually reborn in every medium humanity invents. What does this mean for our understanding of them? On one level, it muddies the waters. Popular culture often distorts, turning careful excavation into sensational tales. On another level, though, it keeps the pyramids alive in the global imagination. They are not relics fading into irrelevance, but living icons, renewed in meaning with each retelling. Perhaps this perpetual reinvention is part of why they endure, not just physically, but culturally. The Egyptians built their pyramids to be eternal, to secure the memory of rulers against the erosion of time. In a strange twist, modern culture has fulfilled that goal far beyond what any pharaoh could have imagined. The names of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure are spoken not only in Egypt but around the world, carried by novels, films, songs, and theories. Their monuments have become canvases onto which every generation paints its fears and aspirations. In this sense, the pyramids are more than archaeological puzzles. They are mirrors, reflecting the desires of those who gaze upon them. To some, they reveal engineering genius. To others, they suggest cosmic secrets. To still others, they are symbols of endurance. None of these interpretations can fully claim the truth, yet each adds to the layers of meaning that envelop the stones. The pyramids live both in the desert and in the imagination, and perhaps that dual existence is their greatest achievement. As the 21st century advances, their cultural power shows no sign of waning. Tourists still gather at dawn to watch the sun rise over the plateau, while millions more encounter the pyramids daily through screens, books, and conversations. They are at once real and mythical, historical and futuristic. And in that strange duality lies their enduring mystery. The pyramids were built to last for eternity, but eternity, it seems, is not just about stone. It is about story, and the world is still telling theirs. When we look at the pyramids of Giza, it's tempting to see them as utterly unique, as if no other civilization ever attempted anything remotely similar. But the truth is far stranger. Across the world, separated by oceans and centuries, cultures arose that built their own pyramids. They did not copy the Egyptians. They did not share blueprints across continents. And yet the form repeated again and again, as if humanity, in scattered corners of the earth, reached for the same geometric solution to a universal longing. Take Mesoamerica, for example. In the jungles of Mexico, long after the Giza pyramids had stood silent for millennia, the Maya and later the Aztecs raised stepped pyramids from limestone and volcanic rock. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan towers nearly as high as the smaller pyramids at Giza, and like them, it aligns with celestial cycles. On the equinox, the rising sun casts shadows that transform stairways into luminous serpents, an effect that still draws crowds today. These were not tombs for kings, but living temples, stages for rituals where priests offered sacrifices, and the cosmos was thought to flow into human affairs. Farther south, the Inca did not build pyramids of the same scale, but they too arranged their ceremonial centers along lines of cosmic significance. To them, architecture was a dialogue with the heavens, a way of anchoring the divine into stone. This echo across civilizations suggests that the pyramid was not a coincidence, but a recurring vision, a shape that embodied both the earth's solidity and the sky's reach. In Africa, beyond Egypt, pyramids rose in Nubia, in what is now Sudan. The Kushite kings, who once rivaled Egypt and even ruled it for a time, constructed dozens of smaller, steeper pyramids in the sands of Meroe. Though less massive, their intent was similar: to preserve rulers in eternal rest, watched over by gods. These Nubian pyramids stand today, weathered and partly broken, but haunting reminders that Egypt did not hold a monopoly on monumental ambition. The idea had spread along the Nile, adapted and reimagined by neighbors who shared cultural ties, yet forged their own distinct identity. Even in distant Asia, echoes of the pyramid form appear. In China's Shanxi province, beneath earthen mounds that from afar resemble natural hills, archaeologists have found vast tombs built for emperors of early dynasties. Though not clad in limestone or basalt, their shape nonetheless evokes the pyramid. A mountain of earth hiding chambers designed to carry rulers into eternity. The most famous of these, the mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, remains largely unexcavated, its treasures sealed beneath an artificial mound said to contain rivers of mercury and constellations painted in precious metals. What is striking is not that pyramids exist in multiple places, but that they emerge independently. Separated by vast distances, cultures with no contact chose the same shape to express permanence, authority, and cosmic order. Was it simply that the pyramid is structurally stable, the logical outcome of stacking heavy materials without advanced tools? Or was it something deeper, an intuition that the triangular ascent mirrored spiritual striving, a symbolic climb from base reality to divine apex? Archaeologists often emphasize the practical explanation. The pyramid is the most stable form for monumental construction, naturally resisting collapse, and indeed, engineering may explain much, yet symbolism cannot be dismissed. Again and again, builders aligned their pyramids with stars, solstices, and sacred numbers. The pyramid was not just stone, it was cosmology crystallized. The repetition has fueled countless theories of diffusion, that perhaps a lost global civilization seeded the idea, or that travelers from Egypt or Atlantis carried the knowledge abroad. Mainstream history sees no evidence for this. The timelines do not align, the materials differ, and the purposes diverge. Yet the allure of a hidden connection persists. After all, how could human beings so far apart dream the same dream? Perhaps the answer lies less in contact and more in shared psychology. The pyramid embodies universals, stability, ascent, a bridge between earth and sky. To a ruler seeking immortality, or to a priest seeking cosmic harmony, no other form so perfectly translates ambition into geometry. And so the pyramid becomes inevitable, not because it was taught, but because it was imagined again and again, as if written into the architecture of human thought. But parallels raise unsettling questions. If cultures independently aligned pyramids with celestial bodies, what knowledge did they share about the sky? Did they inherit traditions from an older era of sky watchers, a time when the night was the only clock and the heavens the only scripture? At Teotihuacan, at Giza, at Meroe, alignments suggest not mere decoration, but intentional dialogue with cycles larger than any kingdom. The builders were saying, "We are part of something vast, and we inscribe it in stone." Modern explorers, standing before these scattered monuments, often feel the same shock. How could humans of such different times and places converge on such similar visions? Some whisper of ancient teachers, others of extraterrestrials. Scholars insist on parallel evolution. Yet, whichever explanation one favors, the result is the same. The pyramid is not a regional curiosity, but a global language, spoken in stone across continents. And so, when we gaze at Giza, we are not seeing an isolated marvel, but one chapter in a planetary saga. From the sands of Sudan to the jungles of Yucatan, from the plains of China to the highlands of Peru, humanity has lifted its stones into the same enduring silhouette. The reasons may differ, funerary, ritual, cosmic. But the resonance remains. The pyramid is not just Egypt's monument. It is humanity's mirror, reflecting our need to anchor eternity in matter. Perhaps that is why, even today, skyscrapers taper like stepped pyramids, and glass towers borrow their silhouette. We still crave the same upward thrust, the same promise of permanence. The ancient builders may be gone, their language is silent, but their geometry lingers, immortal as the stone itself. In this broader light, the Giza pyramids are no longer isolated wonders. They are participants in a dialogue humanity has been having with itself for millennia, a dialogue of shape and meaning that stretches across oceans and ages. And in that dialogue lies a mystery no less profound than hidden chambers, why we build as we do, and what we hope to preserve when the sands of time move on. In recent decades, the mystery of the pyramids has shifted from speculation to science. Instead of explorers armed with lanterns and chisels, we now have teams of physicists, engineers, and archaeologists wielding technologies that would have been indistinguishable from magic to the ancient builders. Yet the questions remain the same. Are the pyramids fully understood? Or do they still conceal chambers, passages, and functions hidden beneath their massive shells of stone? One of the most revolutionary tools is Muon tomography, a technique that uses cosmic rays, tiny particles from space that constantly bombard the Earth. When muons pass through stone, they lose energy, and by measuring how many reach detectors placed inside or beneath a structure, scientists can create images of what lies within. It is like X-raying a mountain. In 2017, researchers from the Scan Pyramids project used this method inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu. To their astonishment, the data revealed a void, an empty space the size of a passenger jet, above the Grand Gallery, previously unknown and inaccessible. The discovery sparked waves of excitement. Was this a hidden chamber, deliberately sealed by the builders? Was it a structural cavity, a byproduct of the pyramid's immense weight? Or could it be something we have not yet imagined? For centuries, explorers dreamed of stumbling upon secret rooms inside the pyramid, chambers untouched since antiquity. Now science suggested such rooms might actually exist. But the void remains enigmatic. No one has entered it. No passage has been identified leading inside. Egyptian authorities, wary of damaging the pyramid, have resisted invasive attempts to drill or tunnel. For now, the void is a ghostly image in data sets, a silent shape concealed by limestone. Yet its presence alone proves that the pyramid is not fully mapped, that surprises still lurk inside a monument 4.5 millennia old. Ground-penetrating radar has also been employed around the base of the pyramids, searching for hidden tunnels and subterranean chambers. Some scans suggest anomalies, dense or hollow regions beneath the plateau. Researchers debate whether these are natural cavities in the limestone bedrock or human-made constructions. Local legends have long spoken of tunnels linking the pyramids, or of hidden archives buried deep under the Sphinx. The radar images, though inconclusive, keep such possibilities alive. Satellite imaging has added another dimension. By analyzing heat signatures at night, scientists can detect variations in how stone blocks radiate stored heat. Some blocks cool more slowly, suggesting differences in density or construction. At the Great Pyramid, Thermal anomalies have been recorded along the base, hinting at hidden recesses or passageways. Once again, the results raise questions rather than answers, feeding the sense that the pyramid story is unfinished. These technologies blur the line between myth and data. Where earlier generations relied on speculation or esoteric interpretation, we now have streams of numbers and images. Yet the effect is strangely similar. Mystery deepens rather than resolves. The void detected by muons might be an accident of architecture, or it might be the long-sought Hall of Records that fringe theories have whispered about for decades. Ground anomalies might be geological quirks, or they might be tunnels leading to chambers sealed before history began. What makes this all the more haunting is how little we can do. The pyramids are fragile despite their size, and modern authorities are understandably reluctant to allow drilling or excavation. Technology can peer through stone, but until a direct entrance is found, we are left staring at shadows and outlines. It is a paradox of archaeology. The closer we come to answers, the more acutely we feel the barrier between us and the past. And so, 21st century scientists find themselves in the same position as 19th century adventurers, captivated by the possibility of secrets still hidden. The difference is that their tools are not pickaxes, but particles from space, not candles, but satellite sensors. The pyramids, once thought to be fully explored, have become puzzles again, their interiors alive with speculation. For the public, each new discovery renews fascination. Headlines proclaim hidden chambers found, while skeptics urge caution, reminding us that anomalies do not always equal treasures. Still, the pyramids continue to yield data that suggests incompleteness, that invites us to imagine. And imagination has always been half the power of these monuments. In a broader sense, the scientific exploration of the pyramids mirrors humanity's own journey. We are no longer satisfied with legends, we seek measurements. Yet even with the most advanced tools, we confront limits. Technology can penetrate stone, but not meaning. A void is just a shape until we know its purpose. A tunnel is just an anomaly until we walk through it. The pyramids remind us that knowledge is layered, that some truths require patience, and that mystery is not erased by science but redefined by it. It may be that future generations, with even subtler tools, will finally glimpse what the ancient builders concealed. Perhaps they will discover simple engineering tricks, a hollow to relieve stress, a passage blocked with rubble, or perhaps they will find something astonishing, artifacts untouched, texts unimagined, evidence that rewrites history. Until then, we stand on the edge of knowing, caught between data and silence. And there is something fitting about that. The pyramids were never meant to give up their secrets easily. They were designed to endure, to defy time, to hold something beyond the reach of ordinary eyes. Whether that something is eternal rest for a king or a legacy for humanity remains the great question. Science, for all its power, has only begun to knock at the door. The discovery of hidden voids and anomalies inside the Great Pyramid did not simply spark excitement. It reignited one of the oldest conflicts in the study of ancient civilizations, the clash between mainstream scholarship and alternative speculation. Archaeology has always carried with it the tension between evidence and imagination. With the pyramids, that tension becomes magnified because the structures themselves seem designed to provoke awe, to hint at something greater than stone. Every scan, every anomaly, every unexplained feature becomes a battlefield of interpretation. On one side stand the Egyptologists, scholars who have spent lifetimes decoding inscriptions, cataloging artifacts, and reconstructing the chronology of dynasties. For them, the pyramids are extraordinary but comprehensible products of human endeavor. They insist that the pyramids are tombs, monuments to kings, and feats of engineering. To Egyptologists, speculation about lost civilizations or extraterrestrial influence threatens to overshadow the real achievements of ancient Egypt, reducing millennia of human ingenuity to the work of mysterious outsiders. On the other side are the alternative theorists, writers and researchers who argue that the pyramids contain clues to a deeper story. They point to the precision of the construction, the astronomical alignments, the scale of the stones, and the absence of mummies in the Great Pyramid. They remind us that no written record explicitly states how the pyramids were built. To them, anomalies are not mere accidents, but evidence that the official narrative is incomplete. The void detected by muons is not just a structural cavity. It is a chamber deliberately concealed. The underground anomalies are not random geology. They are the entrances to hidden archives. Between these positions lies the public, often caught in fascination, unsure of which voice to trust. Popular media amplifies the drama. Documentaries portray the pyramids as eternal mysteries, while academic publications insist on restraint, preferring to withhold conclusions until evidence is incontrovertible. The pyramids, in this sense, are not just archaeological sites. They are arenas of cultural imagination, contested spaces where authority and wonder collide. The debates have sometimes turned bitter. Egypt's antiquities authorities, historically protective of their heritage, have dismissed many alternative claims as fantasy. Critics accuse officials of suppressing data, of refusing to explore anomalies, of guarding secrets in order to preserve a tidy version of history. Authorities respond that reckless speculation threatens the integrity of monuments, that unauthorized digs or reckless drilling could cause irreparable damage. At stake is not just knowledge but stewardship of one of humanity's greatest legacies. Yet even within academia, cracks appear. Some Egyptologists admit that the purpose of the Great Pyramid remains uncertain. Was it truly a tomb? If so, why has no body, no sarcophagus lid, no funerary inscriptions ever been found within its main chambers? Why do the so-called air shafts point with uncanny accuracy toward key stars? And why, if the pyramid was only a tomb, was it engineered with such monumental overdesign, its corridors aligned with such cosmic precision? These questions do not prove alternative theories correct, but they do reveal the limits of what is known. The alternative theorists, meanwhile, are diverse. Some argue for advanced ancient civilizations, lost in cataclysm, leaving behind monuments like the pyramids as a kind of stone message. Others point toward celestial alignments and suggest the pyramids were designed as star maps, part of a cosmic plan linking heaven and earth. Still others propose more radical ideas, that the pyramids were energy machines, resonant structures designed to harness telluric forces of the earth. Mainstream scholars dismiss such claims as pseudoscience, but the persistence of these ideas reveals how powerfully the pyramids inspire imagination. It is tempting to view this conflict as a war between science and myth, but the truth is subtler. Science itself thrives on questions, and many of the so-called fringe ideas begin as questions that science has not yet answered. Why do Muon scans reveal a void? Why do radar images suggest tunnels? Why are the blocks aligned with such accuracy? To dismiss curiosity outright is to risk missing insights. To accept wild theories uncritically is to abandon discipline. The balance is delicate, and the pyramids stand in the middle like silent judges, forcing us to reckon with our need for certainty and our hunger for mystery. There is also the question of heritage. The pyramids are not just objects of study, they are symbols of national identity for Egypt, icons of continuity linking modern Egyptians with their ancient past. Outsiders speculating about lost civilizations or alien builders sometimes appear to diminish that heritage, suggesting that Egyptians themselves could not have achieved such marvels. This has bred resentment, a sense that alternative theories are not merely unscientific, but disrespectful. In this light, the debates are not only about truth, but about cultural ownership of the past. And yet the allure of mystery persists. Tourists arrive by the millions, gazing up at the Great Pyramid, feeling the weight of history pressing down through its stone. They do not come because the pyramid is simply a tomb. They come because it resists definition, because it stands as something larger than any single explanation. Even skeptics cannot help but wonder, what if the chambers inside still hold something unseen? What if the alignments mean more than coincidence? What if history, as we know it, is only a fragment of the truth? Ultimately, the controversy surrounding the pyramids reveals as much about us as it does about the ancient builders. We live in an age of science, yet we crave myth. We demand facts, yet we are moved by mystery. The pyramids stand at this crossroads, their stones both data and dream, their silence both frustration and invitation. Perhaps this is why they endure not just as relics but as living symbols, because they remind us that knowledge is never complete, that imagination is part of being human, and that the greatest monuments are those that outlast explanation. The Great Pyramid, in particular, continues to sit at the center of this tension, a vast riddle in stone. Scholars dissect its chambers, theorists sketch alternative blueprints, governments guard its integrity, and travelers gaze at its slopes with awe. Yet, through it all, the pyramid itself remains unchanged, indifferent to our disputes. It has no need to prove or disprove anything. It simply exists, enduring, absorbing centuries of speculation like the desert absorbs the sun. And perhaps that is its final lesson, that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but lived with, contemplated across generations, reshaping our imagination again and again. The influence of the pyramids extends far beyond the desert plateau where they rise. Across continents and centuries, cultures have looked to the Egyptian pyramids not only as monuments, but as archetypes, patterns that echo in distant lands and times. Their triangular silhouettes seem to reappear in civilizations separated by oceans, from the stone temples of Mesoamerica to the step pyramids of Mesopotamia. The recurrence of this form has inspired countless theories. Was it coincidence, diffusion, or perhaps a universal impulse in the human imagination? In Central America, the Maya and Aztec built stepped pyramids that dominate their sacred cities. The Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, vast and imposing, bears a striking resemblance in scale to the Great Pyramid of Giza, though its form is terraced rather than smooth. the Maya aligned their structures with celestial events, tracking solstices and equinoxes, much like the suspected astronomical intentions behind the Egyptian designs. To those who study patterns across civilizations, such similarities hint at a shared human quest to bridge earth and sky, to embody cosmic order in stone. Skeptics argue that pyramidal forms are simply stable, the easiest way to build upward without collapse. Yet the symbolic weight attached to these structures suggests something deeper, a global fascination with permanence, transcendence, and the dialogue between mortality and eternity. Even in ancient Mesopotamia, ziggurats, tiered temples built of mud brick, rose in stages towards the heavens. Though their materials were less durable than the limestone of Egypt, their purpose was equally ambitious: to connect the realm of gods with that of mortals. The ziggurat of Ur, dedicated to the moon god Nana, embodies the same impulse we find in the Great Pyramid, a structure that becomes not just a building, but a cosmic axis, a stairway between worlds. The comparison fuels debates about whether early civilizations independently conceived of similar ideas, or whether knowledge traveled across trade routes and migrations, weaving a hidden web of cultural exchange. In Greece and Rome, while pyramids were not central to architectural tradition, their symbolism endured. Small pyramidal tombs dotted the landscape, echoing Egypt's legacy. Later, during the Renaissance, European thinkers rediscovered ancient texts and monuments, infusing pyramids with mystical associations. Scholars linked them to Platonic geometry, Hermetic wisdom, and the lost knowledge of antiquity. Alchemists saw the pyramid as a symbol of transformation, its apex pointing toward divine truth. Artists and architects integrated pyramidal shapes into their designs, convinced that these forms resonated with universal harmony. By the Enlightenment, the pyramid had become a potent emblem of mystery and rationality intertwined. The all-seeing eye atop a pyramid, famously appearing on the Great Seal of the United States, reflected both fascination with ancient Egypt and a belief in higher order guiding human affairs. To the founders of a new nation, the pyramid represented durability, stability, and enlightenment rising above the unfinished work of history. In this way, Egypt's monuments reached into modernity, shaping political symbolism as well as architectural form. In the 19th century, when Napoleon's scholars accompanied his campaign in Egypt, the pyramids ignited a new wave of fascination. The deciphering of hieroglyphs, the mapping of tombs, the sketches of colossal monuments, all filtered back into Europe, feeding an appetite for the exotic and the arcane. Egyptomania swept across art, fashion, and architecture. Obelisks were erected in Paris, London, and New York. Cemeteries adopted pyramid-shaped mausoleums. The silent geometry of Giza had become a global language, speaking to both science and spectacle. But with the fascination came appropriation. Western powers extracted artifacts, shipped them to museums, and framed Egyptian heritage through their own narratives. The pyramids became both icons of wonder and trophies of conquest. For many Egyptians, the monuments symbolized pride as well as frustration, a heritage admired worldwide but too often interpreted by outsiders. The question of ownership, of who has the right to define the meaning of the pyramids, continues to shape debates today. In the 20th century, as technology advanced, pyramids took on new roles in the collective imagination. Architects experimented with pyramid forms in modern structures, from the Louvre's glass pyramid in Paris to the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas. These were not sacred tombs, but cultural statements, appropriations of an ancient geometry to evoke grandeur, mystery, or entertainment. Meanwhile, conspiracy theories flourished. Some claimed the pyramids encoded secret prophecies or harbored alien technology. The pyramid became a canvas for projection, a shape onto which modern anxieties and fantasies could be painted. At the same time, scholars deepened their study of Egypt's monuments. Radiocarbon dating, geological surveys, and linguistic analysis all aimed to place the pyramids firmly within history. Yet the more precise the measurements became, the more awe persisted. The blocks were still enormous, the alignments were still striking, the silence of the pyramid's core remained haunting. Science could explain methods, but it could not strip away the aura. The pyramids endured not only as physical structures, but as enduring enigmas, feeding the imagination of each new generation. What is striking is how adaptable the pyramid has proven to be. It has served as a tomb, a temple, a national emblem, a mystical symbol, a political icon, and even a tourist attraction wrapped in neon lights. Few architectural forms have carried so many meanings across so many eras. This adaptability speaks to the depth of its resonance. A pyramid is simple, 4 sides rising to a point, yet it is also inexhaustible in interpretation. It embodies stability and ascent, earth and heaven, mortality and eternity. No wonder cultures across the world, even without direct contact, found themselves drawn to the same shape. And so, when we look at the Great Pyramid today, we are not merely seeing Egypt, we are seeing echoes of Teotihuacan, of Ur, of Renaissance Florence, of Enlightenment America, of Paris and Las Vegas. The pyramid is a global mirror, reflecting humanity's obsession with what lies beyond the visible. It has been used to anchor myths of lost civilizations, to inspire revolutions, to decorate casinos. Through it all, the original stands on the Giza plateau, indifferent yet luminous, radiating its influence across time and space. Perhaps this is the true power of the pyramids. They are not just monuments of stone, but engines of meaning. They adapt to each era, each culture, each imagination. They remind us that history is not a fixed line, but a living dialogue, a tapestry woven of facts, dreams, and interpretations. The pyramids endure because they are not just relics. They are symbols of humanity's refusal to accept limits, of our hunger to touch the eternal, of our ability to transform stone into myth. The journey of the pyramids does not end in the desert winds of Giza, nor in the libraries of scholars, nor in the imaginations of those who seek mysteries in the stars. Their story continues, endlessly reshaped by each generation that encounters them. Standing before the Great Pyramid today, one is struck not only by its sheer mass, but by its silence, a silence that is more eloquent than any inscription. This silence invites projection. We gaze at the stone and fill it with our questions, our fears, our hopes. It is less a monument to the past than a mirror of the present, reflecting back whatever we bring to it. If you approach as an engineer, you see challenges of logistics and mechanics, levers and ramps, weights and pulleys. If you approach as a priest, you see sacred geometry, alignments, and rituals designed to guide souls to eternity. If you approach as a dreamer, you see messages from beyond, star maps etched into stone, signals left for the future. The pyramid obliges all of these visions because it was designed to stand outside of time. to transcend the categories that normally divide human thought. In this sense, it is not simply a monument, it is a vessel. Throughout history, the pyramids have been both claimed and resisted. They have been pulled into national pride, global tourism, spiritual speculation, and even political conspiracy. Yet none of these uses can fully contain them. The pyramids remain larger than any narrative. They frustrate neat conclusions. They remind us that human history is not always linear, that knowledge can be gained and lost, remembered and distorted. In this way, the pyramids are not just ruins of the past. They are warnings for the future. Consider how many civilizations have gazed at them, drawn meaning from them, and then fallen into silence. Empires rose and collapsed, their languages faded, their monuments crumbled. But the pyramids endured, their outlines visible against the horizon long after those who built them were forgotten. They are witnesses, and in their endurance lies a lesson, that time reduces even the greatest powers to dust, but symbols endure. They remind us of the fragility of our own world, of how little will remain when centuries pass. What we build in stone and what we encode in memory may be all that survives. Yet the pyramids are not only about mortality, they are also about resilience. They show us that humans, even with primitive tools by modern standards, could imagine and realize something almost beyond imagination. They prove that the boundary between myth and reality is thinner than we think. What earlier ages might have considered impossible, the Egyptians achieved. And so we are left with the paradox. The pyramids are both mysterious and concrete, both symbolic and practical, both eternal and fragile. Modern technology has tried to close the gap. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, and satellite imagery have revealed voids, hidden chambers, and anomalies beneath the stones. Some believe we are on the edge of new discoveries that could rewrite what we know about Egypt's Old Kingdom. Others remain cautious, noting that speculation has always run ahead of evidence. But whether future excavations reveal hidden archives or only confirm the complexity of ancient engineering, the fascination will not end. The pyramids will continue to call us back, demanding to be interpreted, reinterpreted, and woven into new stories. Perhaps that is their greatest power, not to answer questions but to generate them. They force us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the vastness of human imagination. They destabilize certainty, reminding us that history is always incomplete, that the line between fact and myth is porous. The pyramids embody what can be called deformed history, a history bent and reshaped by time, interpretation, and desire. In their stones, we see not only the past, but our own compulsion to make meaning, to search for order in the silence of antiquity. And so, when the sun sets over Giza and the desert cools into shadow, the pyramids stand as they have for millennia, immovable, immense, indifferent to our interpretations. Yet in that indifference lies their brilliance. They are not ours to fully understand, but they are ours to encounter, to wrestle with, to wonder at. Every visitor, every scholar, every dreamer who looks upon them adds another layer to their story. The pyramids do not simply belong to Egypt, they belong to the world, to the imagination of humanity itself. As we close this exploration, we might ask, what do the pyramids mean to us now, in an age of satellites, skyscrapers, and quantum computing? Perhaps they remind us that progress is not always linear, that civilizations rise and fall, that knowledge can be both preserved and lost. Perhaps they remind us that the human spirit, in its longing for eternity, will always build monuments, whether of stone, steel, or code. And perhaps they remind us that in every era we stand at the edge of mystery, looking back to the past to find guidance for the future. The pyramids will endure long after we are gone. Future generations will see them under skies we will never know, in worlds reshaped by climates, wars, and revolutions. They will ask the same questions we ask now, and perhaps they too will find no final answers. That is the enduring beauty of the pyramids. They are eternal enigmas, guardians of humanity's distorted memory, silent yet inexhaustible. In the end, the pyramids are less about what the ancients knew than about what we seek. They are monuments to curiosity, to ambition, to the refusal to accept mortality without a fight. They rise from the desert not as answers, but as invitations to question, to imagine, to remember. And as long as they stand, history will remain not fixed but alive, not linear but layered, not complete but gloriously deformed. Welcome to Deformed History,